not too strong again. So I apologize. It's like you have an old machine. It takes time. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Did we read this chapter? Baytul Maqdis. You read it?
I didn't.
You should read, considering you have Palestinian origins. It's very much you guys right there. Bismillah. This is dedicated to Palestine, the Islamic way, not the SJP way. Bismillah.
Bismillah. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال المؤلف رحمه الله: بيت المقدس. وكان لإبراهيم زوج أخرى اسمها سارة، وكان لإبراهيم ولد آخر من سارة اسمه إسحاق، وسكن إبراهيم في الشام، وسكن إسحاق، وبنى إسحاق بيتا لله في الشام كما بنى أبوه وأخوه بيتا لله في مكة. وهذا المسجد الذي بناه إسحاق في الشام هو بيت المقدس، وهو المسجد الأقصى الذي بارك الله حوله، وبارك الله في أولاد إسحاق كما بارك في أولاد إسماعيل، وكان فيهم أنبياء وملوك، وكان لإسحاق ولد اسمه يعقوب، وكان نبيا، وكان يعقوب له 12 ولدا، منهم يوسف بن يعقوب عليهما السلام. ويوسف له قصة عجيبة في القرآن، وإليك هذه القصة.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Baytul Maqdis. So the very first word for today is Al-Quds. Al-Qudsu. This is a very powerful word. And the meaning is just so profound that I'm going to read straight from the book. So, Quds is the root. Qadasa. That's the root word. Qadasa. At-taqdis is the verbal noun. So I'll write those down. So, Qadasa is the verb, is the root, the tri-letter root. Then at-taqdis, at-taqdis is the verbal noun. So qaddasa yuqaddisu taqdisan, qaddasa yuqaddisu taqdisan. What does taqdis mean? It says it means at-tathiru al-ilahi, which means divine cleansing. Divine cleansing or divine purification. Meaning Allah is cleansing something. Allah is purifying something. And this is taken from the Quran. وَيُطَهِّرُكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. وَيُطَهِّرُكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. This is in Surah Al-Ahzab. Ahzab is 33. Ayah 33. This is a nice reference. 33. This is talking about the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. The family of the Prophet ﷺ, his wives and the rest of his family members are purified by Allah. They're not like other people. يا نساء النبي لستن يا نساء النبي لستن كأحد من النساء. O wives of the Prophet, O women of the Prophet, you're not like any other women. They have special status. So that's tathir. Now this type of tathir is different than physical cleansing. So this is spiritual divine cleansing. And I'm going to tell you why that's important to decipher. Spiritual divine cleansing is different than physical cleansing. Physical cleansing, I may have filth here, and I clean it. That's a physical type of cleanse. A spiritual cleanse is granted by Allah. Okay?
You said taqdees comes from, or tathir from taqdees, or is it?
Taqdees means at-tathir al-ilahi.
Okay.
Divine cleansing, divine purification. Ruh al-Qudus. Ruh al-Qudus Christians use this word to say Holy Spirit. That's not accurate for us. I've used that and I think that's a mistake. I've used that before, but that's a mistake. Because they use it as part of the triune God in their Trinity. And we don't believe in that. So it is the purifying Spirit. Purifying Spirit. Why? Because this is referring to Jibreel alayhi salam. Jibreel is the chief of the angels, and he comes down with spiritual purification from Allah. He has the tool for spiritual purification. Can you guess what that tool is? Revelation. There is no way for anyone to get spiritually purified except through revelation. What Ruh al-Qudus brought. Quran and Sunnah. Al-Bayt al-Muqaddas, or Bayt al-Maqdis, which is the chapter here today, it is the location that has been purified of shirk. The location that has been purified of shirk. In the last chapter we said Allah commanded Ibrahim, وَطَهِّرْ بَيْتِيَ لِي الطَّائِفِينَ وَالْعَاكِفِينَ وَالرُّكَّعِ السُّجُودِ. Purify my house. Does that mean just clean it? Most people, when they think about cleansing, they think about cleaning the floor, cleaning the walls. What's more important is even if your floor has dirt on it, but the place is free of shirk and kufr. So many people, unfortunately, this is what they worry about. They worry about the form, and they don't worry about the heart. So an example is someone who lives in a downtrodden neighborhood, but he rides a fancy car. Instead of buying a couch, he buys rims. Instead of purchasing clothing, he purchases fancy shoes. Just external fanciness. That doesn't change the reality. So the first command that Allah gave to Ibrahim, and remember we said it was a place in a valley and a canyon in the desert. So there was no type of cleaning. Like he was not shining no tile floors. This is Mecca today, has tile floors. What was Ibrahim cleansing the house of? Shirk. So ideological cleansing. People's concepts. Does anyone else have anything to say in the affair of the universe? Do the planets affect the universe? Do the false gods and the mythological entities, the pantheon of gods, do they have an influence? Do people have the right to legislate and say what's ethical, what's not ethical? Right? That's the type of divine purification. Baytul Maqdis was called that because it was established by the prophets of Allah. Okay? Al-Quds was established by the prophets of Allah. Likewise, you have Baytul Maqdis. So look at the words that we have. We have Ruh al-Qudus in the Quran. We have At-Taqdis. وَنَحْنُ نُقَدِّسُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُسَبِّحُ لَكَ. we attribute holiness to you. That's how they usually translate it. So this word turns to holy. Okay? And again, that's the influence of Arabic Christian terminology. What's the Bible called? Al-Kitabu Al-Muqaddas. That's the name of it in Arabic. How does it translate in English? Holy Bible. Let's look up what the word holy means in English. Is it similar to taqdees?
Why would they use Injil to like?
Because Injil is the gospel. Injil is what Jesus brought. The Bible, as we know it, has the Old Testament, which is the 5 books of Moses according to them, and then followed by about 23 books of other prophets of Israel. Then you have the New Testament, which includes 4 Gospels, and then it has the writings of Paul. So the total amount of books in the Bible is, if it's a Protestant Bible, is 67. If it's a Catholic Bible, 76. Or 73. 73, sorry. Because there's 7 books that they removed. The Protestants, when they protested, they're like, we tossing some of this stuff out because it's not authentic. That's important to know. So not all Christians believe in the same book. But now with that, the word Bible itself, it comes from biblios in Greek. And what does biblios mean? Book. Okay? So it is, this word is what Arab Christians use for the Bible. We don't use that word. First of all, it's not holy, because there is writings of people in it. The only thing that's holy is God. In fact, that's by the same Bible. A man came to Jesus, is what it says in the Bible. It says, Master, Master. He's like, who are you talking to? He's like, you. Good master, good master. He says, the only good one is God. The only holy one is God. So only God is actually holy. Now, had it been purely the words of God, then definitely it would be holy. Right? And that's the importance of us figuring things out. So we say the original text that was sent to Moses and sent to Jesus and sent to the other prophets, no doubt is a holy scripture. Is the Bible today holy? No. Because it has the work of man infused. Is there some truth in it? No doubt. But it's not what we believe in. So it's wrong, although this is typical interfaith thing. Muslims believe in the Bible. And then what's silly is they say, yeah, we believe in the Old Testament and the New Testament. That makes no sense whatsoever, because the Old Testament is not the Torah. It's Torah and other things. New Testament is not the Injil. It's Injil and other things. In fact, there's no Injil. There's no gospel. The book that Jesus got doesn't exist. The 4 Gospels that they have, Mark, what are the names?
John.
John is the last one. There's Luke, and there's one more. Matthew. Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. The 4 Gospels. Those people came after the events of the life of Jesus, and they say this, the gospel according to so-and-so. So that's what they recall from the ministry of Jesus, which is only 3 years out of his 33-year life. But it's not actually everything he said. It's some of the things he said. Do you have something?
Well, I have a question, just if you think that it'll be relevant and helpful to us. But can you explain kind of the role that Paul plays to Christians?
Yes.
Because it's very confusing.
No, it shouldn't be confusing. Paul is the founder of Christianity. Paul is the one who originates Christianity, not Jesus. This is according to Christians.
Right.
So there is a book, and there's actually multiple books, but one book is called Paul, the Myth Maker and the Invention of Christianity. So it's written by a Jewish author, and it speaks about Paul. Now Christians call him the Apostle Paul. The Arab Christians say Bulus al-Rasul. Bulus is Paul. Al-Rasul, because he's a Rasul. to them. They believe, again, a Rasul is the one who preaches the gospel and preaches the teachings of Jesus. To them, Jesus is God. He's not the prophet. So God has to send prophets. And that's why, if you study about Christianity, Paul is, according to them, is more influential than Jesus. Because he preached the gospel. Jesus only had a 3-year ministry. And according to them, he was killed. Paul preaches for like 50 years. And he travels the world. Jesus stayed in Palestine. Paul goes all the way to Rome and he gets killed there. But he traveled all throughout the Mediterranean. And his travels and his writings are what the New Testament is. They call them the epistles of Paul. Epistle means risala, it means a treatise. So he sends a letter, he says, Romans. Romans is the people he was talking to. So he sends them a message. Paul's message to the Romans. Corinthians. Corinthians is a group of people. It's like me saying, Diamond Bar. I send Diamond Bar a message. Walnut. Walnut a message. It's like that. So those are names of towns in the Roman Empire that Paul was writing to and interacting with. He had established churches and he was basically checking up on them. Let's say you guys move on and you become like, not the president of the US, but you become like some successful person in life. And then I check up on you and I send you a letter, hey, can you tell me what your update is? Remember what we covered in class? Don't get involved in politics. Stay true to Islam, you know, stuff like that. That's what Paul was doing. Paul was like, stay true to the message of Jesus. He died for your sins. Just remember to repent from your sins, and so on and so forth.
So he's the one that basically introduced the idea of the Trinity?
Yes.
Okay. So if you were to open a Bible, it's divided by
Books.
the books.
Yes. 67 books. So in America, the most famous Bible is called the King James Bible. So that's the Protestant Bible. That's what they use. So it has the Old Testament and then the New Testament. The New Testament has 4 Gospels. Then after the 4 Gospels, you have Acts, which is Acts of the Apostles. So these are the people who were originally supposedly the disciples of Jesus and how they preached the message after, according to them, he died. We don't believe that. So you have Acts 1, Acts 2, and then you start with the letters of Paul. So Paul is mentioned more than Jesus, other than, you know, the attribution to Jesus, but he's mentioned in the book so many times because it's his letters, like he's writing, he's speaking to them.
So I have 2 questions. One, is it true according to Islamic traditions that Jesus, Isa Islam only came for 3 years? His ministry was only 3 years?
We don't know that. Allahu A'lam.
Okay.
We don't know.
Is there a good book that talks about Christianity in an analytical way from an Islamic perspective?
In a what way?
Analytical way, like.
Yes, I mentioned the book before, Guided and Misguided. You got to get those 2 books. You got to read those 2 books because it gives you the historical development of reaching God and missing target when it comes to God. So it starts from how Islam is the original religion of man, and then how people, as we said yesterday, diluted it, changed it, and God would send messengers to remind people of the original message. And then how Judaism starts, and then how Christianity starts, and so on and so forth. So that's a very good start. The other one we just referenced, which is Paul, the myth maker, and the invention of Christianity. But that's not from an Islamic perspective. So I don't want you to take it as gospel, you know, but it's good to realize what religious authorities say on this topic. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to IOK. How you guys doing? He told me he's bringing 1 friend, you guys were doubled. What happened? 1 week delay, you added another person. What's your name?
Murad.
Murad?
Bishop.
Bishop. You're the UCI guy.
I'm the UCI guy.
MashaAllah. Yes, I heard about you guys. You're famous. MashaAllah. I want your autograph after class. Okay, so today we're talking about Baytul Maqdis and we're talking about its definition. So that's what has led to this topic, because we're talking about Al-Kitab al-Muqaddas, which is the Arabic for the Holy Bible. So, holy, who picked up the word holy in English for us? Read it for us so we can see how does it match, or how does it connect with our word for taqdees.
They have it as exalted or worthy of complete devotion, as one perfect in goodness and righteousness.
Okay, so holy would be the proper translation of as-salam, as in the name of Allah. Say it again.
Exalted or worthy of complete devotion, as one perfect in goodness and righteousness.
Perfect in goodness and righteousness. So, what do we say about Allah? As-salam. What's the definition? As-salimu min al-uyubi wal-naqa'is. The one who's free of deficiencies, faults, and mistakes. Perfect, holy, flawless. Okay, what else do you have?
Divine.
Divine. Okay, what else?
The third one is devoted entirely to the deity or the work of the deity.
So this now could be someone who is not actually the divine. And that's a problem for us, because you use the same word for the divine and the same word for non-divine entities.
He gives examples: a holy temple, holy prophets.
Did I tell you guys about the guy who told me, "Your Holiness"? Do you remember that story? I said, "No, man, I just have some holes, but not holy." But that's what they say to the Pope. They say, "Your Holiness," because they believe those individuals are actually holy. That's the other problem. It's not just dedicated. So you got to be careful with that. So we don't use holy except for Allah. Only Allah is holy. So don't say the holy water of Zamzam. So nothing in the creation is holy. Okay? Only God is holy. Yes?
This question doesn't go unanswered, but I was really curious.
You got to be loud. Remember, I am old and hard of hearing. You have to amplify your voice, please.
Yeah. So, do we have any information about what happened to Maryam after the story ends in the Quran? We don't have any information at all.
Nope. We don't have any information. And the sad thing is, the story in the Bible calls her a crazy woman.
Really?
Yeah, Bible calls the Jesus in the New Testament calls his mother a crazy woman. Now look how the Quran says that. وَجَعَلْنِي بَرًّا وَجَعَلَنِي بَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. What's the ayah?
You just said it.
No, the first part was not right. وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. Dutiful and honoring my mother, and he did not make me harsh or wretched. Barran is the opposite of uquq. Birrul walidain is to never speak bad and to always be respectful. The depiction of Jesus in the Bible is that he was very disrespectful to his mom, called her a crazy woman. What does Allah say about Mary in the Quran? The best woman in all of humanity. A best woman in all of humanity cannot be crazy. Yes.
When something like that is attributed to a person who we hold with high respect and esteem, I've heard the phrase after you're supposed to say وَعَيَانِ بِاللَّهِ.
وَالْعِيَادُ بِاللَّهِ. Or like we said yesterday, حَاشَا لِلَّهِ. That's the word. Yeah. Yeah, so we would say حَاشَاهَا or حَاشَا عِيسَى أَنْ يَقُولَ ذَلِكَ فِي أُمِّهِ. It's impossible that Jesus would say something like that to his mother. He's a messenger of Allah. He's one of the 5 greatest messengers. Like, he wouldn't do such a thing. And again, our idea of messengers is that they have isma, they are protected from committing major sins. And to call your mom crazy is a major sin. You're like, what if my mom is crazy? That's possible, right? Still don't call her crazy. It's like, what does it help when you call a crazy person crazy? Did you ever see that as diffusing a tense situation? Like, let's say somebody's just losing it right here, just completely out of it, and you're like, you look crazy. What is going to happen? It's like, oh yeah, let me show you crazy. Right? So you got to be careful. Even if someone is crazy, you don't tell them that. You're like, no, I'm just saying the truth. That's not the truth. That's going to be reckless. Anyway, moving on. So al-ardul muqaddasa, we have multiple things here. So now the words that are mentioned in the Quran. We have al-ardul muqaddasa. Again, when we speak in English, there's words that already exist, like the Holy Land. But what did we say today about this word? It's not the Holy Land. This is not an accurate translation. It's not the Holy Land. Rather, what is it? Purified of what? Purified of shirk, established on the worship of the one true God and the rejection of false gods. So it has divine purification. That's the whole point of Quds. Quds, taqdees, is divine purification. So now, although you have filthy Zionists there, does that affect the fact that it's still Ardul Muqaddasa? It doesn't. It doesn't matter what you do. So Mecca was Baytullah with 360 idols there. Why? Because that's how it was established. But now you got to take it back and fix it and truly cleanse it. That's why when the Prophet came with authority, what did he do? What was the first thing he did in Mecca? Get rid of those things. To purify it. It wasn't washing the floors. Because temples, you go here in China, we got a Hindu temple. I haven't been. Okay?
The big thing.
The big thing. Yes. On the 71 freeway, right? Down to Corona. I'm sure it has a lot of idols. And from what I heard is they keep it really shiny and clean. Is it a holy place? Based on this concept? No, it's the opposite of holy. Even if it smells good, if it looks good, if it's a work of art, it won't have this concept of taqdees. Taqdees is divine purification. So then we move on. And it says, one of the names of Jannah is Hadiratul Quds, which is the sanctuary of Quds. So that's one word. And then the other meaning for the sanctuary of Quds is Sharia. You know Sister Sharia? So a Sharia is Hadiratul Quds. Why is that the case? It says because Sharia is the sanctuary that allows you to receive divine purification. I mean, how else do you purify yourself? Not with water. True spiritual cleansing. So when we say spiritual cleansing, you got to clean yourself of bad ideas, of diseases of the heart, and of false ideologies. So that's called taqdees. But that only comes to us through the Sharia. Hadira, like this. Okay, so now I wanted to move to the name of Allah, Al-Quddus. What does Al-Quddus mean? 41. Okay. Al-Quddus appears twice in the Quran. One in the end of Surah Al-Hashr. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو. So this is one of the greatest ayat of introducing Allah to people. Who is Allah? Allah is introducing Himself to us. And we said that's one of the purposes of revelation. Right? To inform people who the divine is, who He's not, and then to tell them how to serve the divine and what not to do. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك, one of the names. Al-Quddus, another name. As-Salam, another name. Al-Mu'min, another name. Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir, Subhanallah amma yushrikun. How many names? Allah, Al-Malik, Al-Quddus, As-Salam, Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir. 9 names in one ayah. So that's a very powerful ayah. This is supposed to take at least 9 sessions because each name requires its own session. The other place, يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. The second one, what's the second? Jum'ah. So both of them are in Juz 28, right? And you were going to give us the numbers? طيب. What does it mean when we say that Allah is Al-Quddus? It means to attribute purification to God from every wrong, from every deficiency, from every fault, while making sure to affirm all the perfections that deserve praise. Yeah. So, tasbih and taqdees go hand in hand. So when you say subhanallah, we said, what does subhanallah mean?
Declaring perfection.
We said declaring transcendence and that he is free of faults, mistakes, deficiencies, flaws. She has the numbers.
59:23 for the first one, then 62:1.
Thank you. Jazakumullahu khairan. Okay, so that's Baytul al-Maqdis. Baytul Maqdis, I missed when we spoke about the Kaaba. The Kaaba has multiple names. Al-Baytul Haram. So you have Al-Baytul Haram is the Kaaba. Baytul Maqdis is Baytul Maqdis, which is also called the Masjid, Al-Masjid. Baytul Maqdis is mentioned in Surah Al-Isra. Isra is the surah that comes right before Kahf. Kahf is 18, so Isra is 17. It's also known as Surah Bani Israel. Like, oh my God, so it does belong to them. Yeah, it did, as long as they kept the contract with God. Once Isa came, they rejected the contract with God. So it no longer belongs to them. Allah did give it to them for a period of time. There is no doubt about that. But when you lose the reason why you attained something, it's no longer yours. You can't just claim it as your property forever. It doesn't work like that with Allah. Because who does it belong to? Okay, so if Allah gives me something, can He not take it back? Yes. If He gives me life, does He not take it back? Yes. He gives me a child, can He not take it back? Yes. He gives me a piece of land, can He not take it back? Yes. For them, God doesn't change His mind. If He gave it, He's never going to let go of it. It belongs to us. So in reality, what are they saying? Who is God in this equation? They are God. Because God is subservient to their wishes. So, Al-Bayt al-Haram is the sanctified temple. Bayt al-Maqdis is the purified temple. Both have connections. And that's why it's mentioned here after the story of Ibrahim building the Kaaba. So what does the story go here? وَكَانَ لِإِبْرَاهِيمَ زَوْجٌ أُخْرَى. Abraham had another zawj. What does zawj mean? Partner. Like, wow, look. He uses like woke lingo. Shouldn't say spouse anymore. Partner is more inclusive. Zawj is a partner of everything. So when you have two of anything, it's called a zawj. But in Arabic, zawj is the name of a husband and the name of a wife. It's gender inclusive. How do you like that? In modern standard Arabic, though, they don't use zawj for a woman. What do they say? Zawja. They add ta' marbuta. But that's modern standard Arabic. But in the Quran, in the Sunnah, zawj is zawj. That's it. Which means your pair. The pair. Because you got a pair of something, it makes it whole. Okay? وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ جَعَلْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ. Of everything, we made a pair. So Abraham had another wife, ismuha Sarah. Of course, that's the original wife. The original wife. And Sarah was also related to him. Yesterday somebody spoke about cousins. She was his cousin. How do you like that? Sarah, what does the name Sarah mean? Go ahead, you're going to tell us. Go to Ma'ani, Ma'ajim al-Asma, and see what comes up. So, Sarah is a non-Arabic name. Just like all these people. Ibrahim is a non-Arabic name. Okay? So, we're going to look up Sarah. You guys should look up your names. Many people who have names, they don't know the meaning of their names. Or, this is the sad part, they were lied to. Somebody gave them another name, another meaning for their name. This happens all the time. I ask somebody, what's your name? They're like, this is what I was told. I'm like, no, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Let me tell you what you really mean. Sarah. So, it says, it's a name, a feminine name, and an Aramaic feminine name. So Aramaic is related to Hebrew. They're both Semitic languages. You study that in linguistics. Here, according to this, it says it's not actually a Hebrew name. And why does he say that here? He says because Sarah and Abraham were Aramaic people, were not Hebrews. Because Hebrews came after them, so they cannot be Hebrew. Hebrew as a concept comes afterwards, right? So like we can't say King James of England speaks American English. Why not? There was no America or American English. What does this word mean? Princess or noble woman. And it actually has an origin. The origin is Sarai. Sarai. We have a Sarah here, right? Sarah. Okay. So that's what he has here in this dictionary. Yeah, but I know a lot of people, like they have baby name websites. Man, the translations are so awful. And people just go with it. They go and they're like, yeah, I named my son this. And what did you name him? Iblis. Why? Because I saw it in the Quran. Yeah. Why don't you name him Fir'aun? So somebody recently asked me about naming the child, and I said, look, it is your right to name a child, but that's also one of the main rights of the child on the parents. And considering the place that you're in, you don't want to name the child something that's going to cause them to be abused or ridiculed. So you want to be wise in what you name. Because a name becomes becomes your identity, a form of your identity, and you want to have a name that you're proud of and that has a positive meaning. So that, of course, is a huge discussion, because in many cultures, like, the default is that you're going to be named after your grandfather or something like that. And so there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen, and a lot of education that needs to happen. Also, spouses usually fight. Like, the husband wants one name, the wife wants one name, and this child grows up being schizophrenic because the mom refuses to call him by the. I know people that have two names. Like, the mom calls him one thing, the dad calls him one thing. It's like, who are you right now? Oh, I'm mama's son right now. Okay.
Chef,
Yes.
what would be a good place to look up real meanings of names?
This place.
Which one?
Al-Ma'ani.
Well, I checked up my name and it just says Mary. The word is Mary.
For Maryam? No, I don't agree with you. You looked it up in Arabic?
No. Sorry.
La ilaha illallah. Yeah, well, I'm not going to look up your names right now. We can do that some other time. Right now, we needed to look up Sarah's name. So when I said look up your names, that's your own time. And then send me a note. Tell me, this is what I know my name to be. Okay. وَكَانَ لِإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَلَدٌ آخَرُ. Abraham had another son. مِن سَارَةَ. From Sarah. So this is the second son of Abraham. So Sarah is the wife that Abraham has. But she did not bear children. And this is mentioned in the Quran. أَأَلِدُ وَأَنَا عَجُوزٌ وَهَذَا بَعْلِي شَيْخًا. When the angels came to Abraham to tell him the news, and they said, we're going to give you the news of a child, she was listening in and she was shocked. And she says, how am I going to give birth to a child when I'm an old woman? Ajuz is a very old woman. And my husband is very old as well. So of course the angels told him, this is what Allah chose. That's it. If Allah chooses something, it's going to happen. Don't worry about it. Ismuhu Ishaq. His name is Isaac. Ishaq. So again, you got to be careful sometimes, because what people do is they will try to translate these non-Arabic names by going back to the Arabic root. Doesn't work like that. I can't translate an English name. Like today I asked my wife for antihistamine. Okay? So, and then I translated it to Arabic. Anti, which means you are, feminine. Histamine. She's like, anti-samin. You are fat. She did that, not me, because I would never say such a thing. She was like going along. But don't do that with foreign names, because it doesn't have the same relations, right? So, what does the name Ishaq mean? What do you think it means? And then what does the root? The root in Arabic is sahaqa. Sahaqa means to destroy, to demolish.
With Sarah was an Arabic name or Hebrew?
Yeah. These are non-Arabic names. All of these names, when we do their i'rab, it says Ismu alamin a'jami. It's a name of a person that's non-Arab. Same thing. All of the names of the prophets, except for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Salih. All the other names are non-Arabic names. So they were Arabized in the Quran. That's key. And again, I said this before, because right now, let's say I'm giving a lecture and I say Abraham, and one of the Muslims is like, man, why use that name? That's not Islamic. You think Ibrahim is Islamic? Like, what are you talking about? That's just the Arabized version of Abraham. Maybe Abraham actually is the original name. Also, Abraham is one of the qira'at in the Quran. But of course, if you're going to open that can of worms, it's like, what? There's another qira'ah in the Quran? one Imam, may Allah guide him, he decided to lead people in Salah, and he read in a different qira'ah. And a brother came to him, he's like, brother, what is this? You made mistake in the Quran. He's like, no, I'm reading according to a different qira'ah. He's like, brother, all I know is there is one Allah and one Quran. And what you just read is not Quran. So, yeah, you gotta break things down to people, or you'll give them like a shock. So I hope you guys don't get shocked after this. And like, man, this was a crazy class. I don't know why Najib would bring us to such a So sahaqa is the root. And I'm mentioning this for a specific reason. You're going to be really surprised once you know the reason. Yeah, as-sahqu is to, you have something like a dry leaf and you break it down really small. What is that verb? What do we? Huh?
Crumble?
Crumble it more, smaller than that. Tafteet in Arabic is like. Huh? Grind it, yeah, grinding it. You can say that. So it's used for medicine because traditional medicine, what do? They bring substances and they grind them and they break them down. So Allah uses this word. He says, فَسُحْقًا لِأَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. Destroyed and distant are the people of the hellfire. Okay? So that's sahaqa as a verb. But ishaq is not an Arabic word, so we don't have to worry about that. What's interesting now, many people ask, especially right now because we are in a very I'm going to have to remove this because what I'm about to say has nothing to do with purity. This word, sihaq, is the word for lesbianism in Arabic. We don't have the concept of homosexuality. That's a very new construct. So it's not lesbianism per se, but it's the act of women doing it together. What is the name for men doing it together? Liwat. Where does it come from? Lut alayhi salam. So this is the action of the people of Lot, which translates to sodomy. Okay? So don't connect things. Although this one, the latter, has to do with the messenger's name Lut. This one has to do with the verb, the action. Okay? Has nothing to do with the name Ishaq. Okay? Yes.
I read this book once about the act of sodomy, and it said that the sin is so bad that even Shaitan runs away because he's scared of Allah's wrath. Is that true?
I don't know about that, but it is known to be the worst of all sins. Mm-hmm. The worst of all moral sins that have to do with morality. So people, when they compare it to fornication and adultery, that's not a right comparison. This is way worse than that. So that's key actually, because right now in political discourse, it's like, yeah, people have a girlfriend, so why not? He has a boyfriend. Yeah, it's not the same. It's actually worse of an offense. Just like yesterday we said what sins have different categories, right? And good deeds have different categories. So this happens to be one of the worst categories.
So does that mean that when it's relating to women, it's different than men? Like
yes.
For men, it's even worse.
Yes.
But is relating to two women still much worse than fornication in general? Like, isn't that?
I haven't read about that much because it's not as available in the literature. But it's not worse because, so what is it? This is violating the body because of anal penetration in a way that's not designed for it. Right? So that's the problem with it. There's that aspect altogether. This one is basically what we said, grinding. And that's what, so basically they sit on top of each other or whatever they do. Sorry to get X-rated, but it is connected somewhat, and this is key because we have our own terminology. When you use other people's terminologies, you've already lost the battle. Okay? Because they're going to ask you to do things based on their worldview. We have a different worldview. So we use our own definitions and then we explain what our words are. So don't take it lightly and say homosexuality. We don't have that concept. It's a very new construct. We do have these terms though, and they have specific meanings.
What do you think, or how can distinguishing between the two, like what leverage or like benefit, or how does it change our mindset as opposed to just thinking of it as one?
Sorry, I don't understand.
So, well, let me rephrase the question
Mhm.
and then I'll ask you.
You'll ask later?
Yeah.
Good.
And one question. So, the Qawm Lut, they were males who were.
Yes, it was the males. No, I mean they had women. That's what Lot told them. Marry women.
So, what were the women doing if the men were?
They were doing some other stuff. I mean, that wasn't their only crime. The people of Lut, when you وَتَأْتُونَ فِي نَادِيكُمُ الْمُنْكَرِ, in their social settings, they would do a lot of nasty things. So some of the narrations mention what they used to do. So like one of the things they would do is they would fart in public, like next to each other. They were just nasty people. So they did a lot of nasty things. They would whistle in a specific way. They would clap. They would make nasty sounds. So that's the concept of, so if you look at the tafsir, وَتَأْتُونَ فِي نَادِيكُمُ الْمُنْكَرِ, you used to do nasty things, abominations in your social gatherings. Nadi is a club. So not like going clubbing, but probably that's where clubbing originates from, the people of Lot. Because they do a lot of things in clubs that the people of Lot used to do. So they used to get intoxicated as well. They used to curse. So a lot of those things were like a combo of things. May Allah protect us. Yeah, so what did the women used to do? The women are not mentioned for committing that specific crime. And of course, it's key for you guys to also consider that deconstruction and revisionism of religious scripture makes it seem like the people of Lot, their crime was not sodomy, their crime was raping people. It was rape. But if it's consensual, then it's all good in the hood, because it's all about consent, right? So if there is consent, he's a lover, then it's all good. That's revisionist concepts. So that's how they revised the Bible. So that's why Christians now allow that type of stuff, although historically it was wrong, through this discourse. And the Muslims who say this stuff are using the same exact playbook. No difference whatsoever. So they're like, no, they were not lovers. They didn't actually get married or anything like that. They were just raping people. The other thing they would do is they would actually, highway robbery. That's why they say it. So they were like this. They were bothering the guests. Whenever new people come to town, they would just go and abuse them. So that's why they're bad. It wasn't this. And of course, this is very much in the news right now because of the recent headlines in Brunei and all these great people that care about human rights are boycotting Brunei. Did you guys hear about them boycotting China with the concentration camps? Like, you know how many people live in Brunei?
I How do you boycott Brunei?
Oh, so the Sultan of Brunei is a very rich man, and he owns a lot of hotels. So like the Beverly the Beverly Hotel, and a whole bunch of hotels, they're owned by him. So all these stars are gonna boycott these places that they're regulars in because they want to like hurt his feelings or whatever, put pressure on him.
For what?
Because he just instated a law that says if you're caught doing homosexual acts, you will be executed. So again, this is very much in the news now, and Muslims, mashallah, are saying so many nasty things that are not representative of Islam, but because that's the norm, so we just go with the flow. So it's like somebody, what's his name? The Intercept. You guys read the Intercept article? You guys are not up to date. You guys are. Are you guys up to date? Here we go. I know one of you would. Yeah. So, yeah, Mehdi Hassan recently came and said, you know, he regrets saying homophobic things when he was younger. And he just wrote an article saying, what did he say? It's something related to, this is not from Islam, or not the definition of my Islam, or something.
Yeah, this is not my definition of Islam.
Well, that's good for him, because we don't care about what your definition of Islam is. But I mean, that's a very influential person in Muslim circles. And then he quoted Sheikh Hamza Yusuf there. He's like, don't take my word for it, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. And then the quote is from Seeker's Hub, because it's the interview that Sheikh Hamza gave after the Orlando events. So it's all connected. It's all connected. So now Mehdi Hassan, who's a Shia, is quoting Sheikh Hamza, who's a traditionalist, right? And the Muslims who are reading this are like, of course, yes, this is not my definition of Islam. They didn't bother actually research Islam. So, because, oh, Sheikh so-and-so would never say something wrong. Okay, keep it going like that. That's not going to help us on the Day of Judgment. When Allah says, why did you do that? Oh, I was just following Sheikh so-and-so. Okay, that's not good. May Allah protect us. So, we have to learn Islam. That's the key here. Learn Islam not from the Intercept and not from Hulu shows, because that was the hot thing yesterday in chaplaincy. Students told me about Hulu. I'm like, oh man, you guys love me. Tell me things that traumatize me forever. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna have nightmares. In fact, I had so many nightmares. Last night I came back from chaplaincy and I just died. My wife was like, how was your day today? I couldn't talk. And the dreams I had were so strange. Alhamdulillah, today we're talking about something pure, right? Baytul Qudus, Baytul Maqdis. Like,
Sheikh, is Seekers Hub a credible website?
is what?
Seekers Hub a credible website?
Not that article.
Okay, but like the website in general.
I mean, it's got a lot of good stuff in it, no doubt. It's got a lot of good stuff in it, and it also gives answers based on madhabs. So if you, well, 3 madhabs, they don't really have anything on the Hanbali madhab. I don't know why, but it's got a lot of good stuff. But again, something like that actually is very sad, because this, I mean, I would remove something like that because it's going to push people the wrong way. What's happening is normalization of this stuff. And it's not a big deal. And it's just like any other sin. This is what's common right now. I was at a conference in Texas as a speaker. And on the podium, another speaker is like, well, you know, what the LGBT community does is not worse than shirk. Shirk is the greatest sin. And they're just committing a sin. It's not worse than shirk. So you talk about stuff like that. Whoa, that's so profound. Yes, it's not as great as shirk. So what does that tell you? So take it easy on them. Don't be so harsh. But what did we say yesterday about proliferation of sins in society? What does that do for all of us? Including the LGBT community. I don't want them to be destroyed. But when destruction comes, it doesn't discriminate. It's actually part of having mercy on them. Mercy is what the doctor does when someone doesn't want to get treated. Like, some people are stubborn, like me. I don't like doctors. But then I die, you see me coughing, right? So like I'm choking and my mom's like, go to the doctor. I'm like, nah, I don't want to go. What is he going to tell me? I got asthma. I know it already, right? So if you don't force someone like that, the doctor's going to be like, I'm going to give you something. And I don't want it. I don't want drugs in my system. Part of his mercy is giving me drugs. I don't say he's abusing me. Allow me, empower me to celebrate my freedom, to choke to death. Right? Like, who thinks this way? Like, yeah, just let him be. Yeah. Good idea. Now, the problem is, yesterday, remember we said something. It doesn't hurt anyone. Is that true? Sins on earth hurt everyone on earth. They don't just hurt the person committing them. So like, Muslims are very concerned. Like right now we have a lot of talk about being green and environmentally conscious. Part of that is refraining from sin. It's not just not driving your car anymore. Because you know what? Plants and animals curse the people who sin. Because when you sin, rain doesn't fall anymore. Where does rain come from? Allah. So that's why when we do istisqa, the dua is, oh Allah, forgive us because of the sins that we committed and bring rain down to this creation that's suffering. Creation suffers with sin. It's not about judging people and saying, oh, you're nasty and you're this and you're... No. It's for everybody's well-being. So Muslims are extremely concerned, not just with themselves, but with everyone, including the things we don't see, like the jinn and the angels. Why don't we eat garlic when we go to the masjid? Even if the masjid is all empty. Who are we concerned for? The angels. You think angels enjoy seeing this stuff? Go ahead, tell them. Angels enjoy sins? If they get offended with garlic, I'm sorry, I just busted another myth. Who runs away from garlic? Go ahead. Vampires. You see how it's all twisted? It's not vampires that run away from it. Who is it? Angels. Right? I just had to let that out. Okay. Bismillah. Yeah, so don't take your Islam from the Intercept, and definitely don't take it from Hulu. Or you'll go to Honolulu. Yes, وَبَنَى إِسْحَاقُ بَيْتًا لِلَّهِ فِي الشَّامِ. And Isaac built a temple dedicated to God in Sham. What did we say Sham means? Left. Good. What does it mean technically? Left of what?
The Kaaba.
Left of the Kaaba. And Yemen is? The right side of the Kaaba. Okay? So he built a house in the north side of Arabia, Ash-Sham. It's known as the Levant in English now. That's the word they use. The Levant. Sham is multiple nation states today. Because the nation state concept also is a construct. Like homosexuality. It's not terms we go by. But, unfortunately, the normalization makes people think that it's like sacred. So that includes Syria and Lebanon and Palestine and Jordan. Palestine, the occupied part, and the non-occupied part. And parts of Iraq as well. That's Sham historically. And a bit of northern Arabia. So specifically though, it was in Al-Quds, this city, the purified city. By the way, for us, I just told you the meaning of Quds. Quds is Jerusalem, in Hebrew, Orshalim. Look up what Orshalim means. It doesn't mean the same thing. Look it up. Look up the meaning of Jerusalem and tell me what you come up with. So that's also key. We don't have the same words. And that's why I tell you, don't use salam and shalom and peace mean the same thing. Because do they? No, they don't. Doesn't matter how many times people repeat that. It doesn't mean the same thing. Arabic has its own standards and meanings. So, what'd you come up with, Najib? No meanings? Come on. Anyone?
I just got peace.
For Jerusalem?
Yes, so it says like land of peace.
Land of peace, yes. That's what they call it.
Or city of peace, abode of peace.
Here we go. The name Shalem, whether as a town or a deity, is derived from the same root as the word shalom, meaning peace. So that the common interpretation of the name is now the city of peace or abode of peace. What is the abode of peace in Arabic? Darus Salam. What is Darus Salam?
Jannah.
Jannah. Like, city of peace? Ain't no peace in the Middle East. What you talking about? So what are we talking about? It's not the same exact meaning. That's the point. Okay? Kama, just like, bana abuhu wa akhuhu baytan lillahi fi Makkah. Just like his father and his brother built a temple dedicated exclusively to the one true God in Mecca. So which one was built first? The Kaaba. The Kaaba was built first. Just like who's the oldest of the two sons? Ismail, Ishmael. Yes, Najib.
When we're talking about what was built here, I know today there's like multiple structures. Are we talking about where the prophets prayed on Isra and Mi'raj? Are we talking about what Masjid al-Aqsa is? Or are we talking about the whole thing?
So first of all, when we say built a masjid, it doesn't necessarily mean what we understand as a masjid. Building a masjid historically was simply dedicating a lot of land and saying this is dedicated to the worship of God. Specifically with the Kaaba, there was a structure that was built, and we described what that structure was. But there was nothing else built around it. And this wasn't the case, by the way, like a few hundred years ago. There was no masjid. You just walk in and all you see is the Kaaba, and everything around it just goes around it. But the Kaaba itself was the structure. So what was there at that time? It's the foundation of the masjid would be where the Qibla of Masjid al-Aqsa is today. That's the foundation. So we can say he built the foundation, just like Ibrahim built the foundation of the Kaaba. And then he says, وَهَذَا الْمَسْجِدُ. So masjid, what was the word for masjid? What's the meaning of masjid?
The place where people bow down.
Masjid is a location for sujood, right? The location where we do sujood. So he goes from bayt to masjid. Bayt to masjid. Allah describes the masajid in the Quran as buyut. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه. In structures that God permitted to be erected and where His name is mentioned. Those are the masajid. And He also says the word masajid, وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. Surely masajid are dedicated and they belong solely to Allah exclusively. So don't worship anyone else but Him in there. Okay? وَهَذَا الْمَسْجِدُ الَّذِي بَنَاهُ إِسْحَاقُ. And this masjid, so this house of worship, الَّذِي بَنَاهُ إِسْحَاقُ. And by the way, sometimes, people try to, so you got to be careful whenever it comes to terms and questioning the root of terms. I remember when we were growing up and then something spread like wildfire, they started saying, don't say mosque, because mosque comes from mosquito. And what they're saying is that the masjid is a mosquito, and BS like that. So when you are going to be skeptical about certain things, make sure that you do thorough research. And don't just go to the nearest blog or Twitter account near you. Make sure that you're actually going to reputable sources. So al-masjid, the English word is mosque. Why is it mosque? Can you take a guess? Look up the history of the word mosque. It's specific for masajid. In English, no one else uses that. In fact, even if you say it, they don't know it, except if they're like did some interfaith. So that's why you have to use a word that they can understand. Mosque is an English word, but many English speakers don't know what it means. So what are you going to say? Don't say our church, because it's not our church. Our house of worship. Right? Our place of worship. You can use woke lingo to our space of worship. Because a lot of people like spaces nowadays. Spaces and faces. Yes, Maryam, we're waiting on you.
Help me.
Yes.
Is word origin for mosque? Earlier mosaic, also mosque, probably is part from Middle French mosque, from Italian moschea or something like that. Earlier something. From Arabic masjid, temple, place of worship. From sajada, he worshipped.
Good.
Thus, place. Ma is place.
Yes. So ma is not just place. Ma is, it could be the tool of something, and it could be the place, and it could be the time, and it could be the thing itself. So remember when we said masjid, masjid is the place we do sujood. What else is masjid? Let's see if you guys remember that.
Place where you would receive the delegations.
No. So when Allah says وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا, I just did one interpretation of the ayah. Masajid, houses of worship, are dedicated to Allah alone, exclusively. What else? Masajid is your body parts that do sujood. The tools for sujood are what? Your joints, the 7 bones. So those belong to Allah, not my body, my choice. وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ, this 7 belong to Allah. So don't use them to serve anyone else but Allah.
Wait, what's the linguistic root of those body parts?
Masajid.
Masajid?
The things that you do sujood with, the tools. So the verb, when you have sajada and you add a ma before it, it is either a place. We said this before with Mawlid. What did we say about Mawlid? Mawlid is a time. Mawlid is a place. Mawlid is the actual birth. All these things are Mawlid. So masjid is the place and the tool for sujood. Okay? So it's like somebody says, I don't believe in the Mawlid. So like you don't believe the Prophet was born? Like, what don't you believe in? No, so I don't want to celebrate this occasion. That's a different conversation. Like yesterday, my daughter, I don't know, kids, they pick up some of the silliest things. They're talking to each other and she's like, dogs are haram. I said, where'd you get that from? She's like, well, we can't eat them. I said, yes, so dog meat is not halal to consume. But the dog itself, how can you say it's haram? Right? And that's what people say. So this is why you have to be careful how you speak. Because like some people are like, let's say they are LGBT identified, right? And they're like, well, you're saying I'm haram. No, I'm not. You exist. You're not haram. What is haram? An action is haram. You are not haram. Right? So you got to start them young. These, I don't know, it's so scary. So this is the problem. You got older children who teach the younger children. So the baby came and she's like, who's that lady that died? I said, what lady that died? So she shows me a picture. And it's me and my wife. In public though, so my wife is not, her face is not showing. So she's like, that lady, she died. I said, where'd you get that from? She's like, my older sister told me. So I called the older sister. I said, what did you tell your sister about this? She was like, I said this is Baba and Mama. I said, no, you didn't. Tell me what you told her. She's like, yeah, and you can see that she's lying. So I said, look, baby, we told you before, lying will get you in trouble with Allah and with me, and saying the truth will never get you in trouble. It may have consequences. So she's like, okay, I told her that lady died. I said, what would make you say such a thing? She's like, because she didn't look like mommy. So she was wearing a different kind of niqab. So,
What was that?
huh?
Khadija?
Khadija was the original question, and then the one right on top of her, Asya, is the one who made the false allegation. I'm like, and you think your mom would not mind me, sitting with another woman who died? Like, why didn't I know about this? So even if it's something small like that, so you have to pick up on it. You're going to hear children say things. I hate it when children say the word haram. Haram is a huge word. Only Allah gets to tell us what haram is. And we just throw it like left, right, and center. These are sacred words that are to be used by specialists. And our scholars in the past wouldn't use the word haram too much. Even if something is haram, they would say, I wouldn't do it. Why? Because they don't want to speak on behalf of Allah with no knowledge. Because that is a great crime. Close to shirk, as we said before. So be careful, even if it's simple conversation, question people, and you're going to learn that people don't know what they're saying. They just repeat it, but it is our job to educate. In a nice way. You don't have to be rude. Like, I didn't make my daughter feel stupid when I told her, no, dogs are not haram. So then the other one said, yeah, we can have a dog if it has a right reason. Good, right? So that's the older one. She's heard something else. But like saying dogs are haram. What? So the other, they all have like toys or something. I said, so what's your toy? And I don't know what the toys are because they're like, some are based on cartoons. And they're like, the baby is a pig. She has a pig. And of course, Islamically, like in Muslim culture, pig is like nasty, disgusting. And the other ones are saying, oh, pigs are haram. So they're mocking her because her toy is a pig or like cartoon or whatever. I said, huh? Yes, that, yes. I can't even repeat them. They're like foreign objects, foreign flying objects. UFOs, unidentified flying objects.
Did she also watch the show Peppa the Pig?
I don't think they watch shows like that, no. But, so I said, okay, let's talk about it. Isn't the pig the creation of Allah? Yeah. So what is haram about the pig? Consuming the pig. Right? That's all. But in our community, again, which is, I don't necessarily think it's bad, but the programming is that, like, if you see a pig, a live pig, you just committed a sin. Like, astaghfirullah. What did you do? I looked at a pig. Do you say astaghfirullah when you look at all these naked people walking around? No, you're like, what's a worse crime? Looking at Mr. Porky or looking at the sister named Piggy? Which one is more of an offense? But see the programming and how heavy it is? Like in some cultures, the dog is nasty. Like, the dog is not a problem. Certain things in the dog, having it as a pet, we have issues with. It's saliva, according to many scholars, but not all of them. Certain schools of law don't consider it impure. So it's good for us to be educated about that. But that doesn't mean I'm going to French kiss my dog. Have him lick me and like wake me up, make wudu in his saliva. That's not right. So, what's the point? Mosque doesn't mean mosquito from when the Spaniards took over Andalusia and they kicked the Muslims out. Okay? So don't spread that stuff around. That's not for distribution. That should be buried in the graveyard. Huwa Baytul Maqdis, and that's the title of the chapter. So the other name of Baytul Maqdis is Al-Masjidul Aqsa. And that's what Allah describes it as. in the first ayah of Al-Isra. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده من المسجد ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا. Perfect is the one who took his servant, and he used the word abd, and abd is the highest form of righteousness according to us. In our community though, it is a derogatory term to call black people. Look how people twist things. Abd is the greatest title that the Messenger of Allah is given in the Quran. Allah never calls him by his name. He mentions his name a few times in the Quran, but doesn't address him by his name. Says, Ya ayyuha nabi, Ya ayyuha rasul. And then the highest stations like Isra is Abd. Right? So Abd is a noble term. And look how people have misplaced it and used it for something disgusting. Their racism. He took his servant from the Al-Masjid al-Haram at night. He took him on a night journey. Isra. Isra is night travel. Night travel. Asra bi'abdihi, with his servant, min al-Masjid al-Haram, from the sacred sanctuary, ila al-Masjid al-Aqsa, to the distant masjid. Aqsa means distant. What is it distant from? The Kaaba. Because the Kaaba is the center of the world. Why do you think we face it in Salah? Because we're trying to get centered. Let's use some mindfulness terminology. We're getting grounded. Right? By the way, a lot of these things are from the Sunnah. Like I saw a little video saying earthing. You know what earthing is? What's earthing? What I
take off your shoes and walk in like the grass.
Talk in the grass and in the dirt, actually.
Well, in electrical terms, earthing is when you have an extra wire to get rid of all the extra electrons that you or something like that.
Okay. Do you guys know that that's from the Sunnah? The Prophet ﷺ would regularly walk barefooted. I remember one time we went to one of the mashayikh, one of our teachers, may Allah bless him. And so I had heard about this from one of the scholars. So some of my colleagues said their sheikh, he's a really big sheikh in Saudi, and he would walk to Fajr, because in Saudi it's very hot. So the ground, like if you're walking barefooted, it's going to melt your feet. But Fajr time, it's cool. So Fajr time, he would walk from his house to the masjid barefooted. Okay? Now, again, in Eastern cultures, we take off our shoes outside the house, right? But you dare not step out the house with no shoes, because they call you names then, right? You're nasty. Your feet are going to get dirty, right? You guys can relate to this or no? Like you guys are like from another planet.
No shoes, no service.
No shoes, no service. Okay, but no, a lot of white people walk barefooted, by the way. But like when our parents see those white people, what do they say about them? Huh? I love that. Say it. That was so natural. She was like so natural. What did they say?
Jahil.
Jahil. Yes, Jahil. Exactly. Well, I've heard other things. You know, in some other quarters they call them gypsies. You know, so the point is though, this is part of our practice that we have gotten rid of. As I said before, just like doing salah in your shoes, as long as they're pure, not clean, pure. What's the difference? They can have dirt, but they don't have any ritual impurity. They don't have najasa. Right? طيب. How did we get to the shoe part? The sheikh. So I had heard about that for years, and then one time we go visit one of our teachers, and he has his regular house where we would go to, and then he had another place which is like it was big and it had an open area. So as we're getting off of the car, he's like, "Take off your shoes." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "We're gonna follow the sunnah now." So I walked and it was uncomfortable because it was actually dirt and pebbles and stuff like that, and it's not comfortable. We're not used to it. We're used to surfaces like this, right? So we're always used to flat surfaces. But he said, just do it, you'll get used to it. Of course it was a little uncomfortable, but then you get accustomed to it. So that's a practice from the sunnah. But now if I was to say that's a sunnah, people would do what as a reaction? If I say, look, this is a sunnah, you get hasanat for it if you do it with the right intention, and it's something noble to do. People are like, yeah, sure, you guys say everything is sunnah. But if some specialist in life coaching comes and says, we're gonna earth today, and you're gonna pay me $150 for my 10-minute consultation. Everybody's like, oh my God, my guru, right? Can you please tell me how to eat? He's like, eat with your fingers. Oh yes, but when people, especially Daisies, when they see your parents eat with their hands, you're like, ew, that's nasty. What about the fork and knife? Right? But guru says it. What do you think gurus do? They're Buddhist. They're white Buddhists. That's all they are. What do you think mindfulness is? It's Buddhism that has become secularized. He's like, feel the air. Breathe. I'm already breathing, right? But what do they want you to do? Consciously breathe. We're supposed to do that all the time. What do they tell you? They tell you, stay away from this. Yes, okay, I'm going to unplug. You paid him $150 so you can unplug. I've been telling you to unplug for free. And you think I'm backwards, right? So it's very interesting how we package things.
But that's the thing, Sheikh, like the way they package it, it's, you know.
Okay, let's look at that. The way they package it attracts a particular heart. But if our hearts were sound, guess which packaging we can see? If our hearts say Muhammad is the standard of ethics, that means whatever he did, a lot of people, they hear his name, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they cry, they get emotional. Do you know he did this? Oh no, he would not have done that. He did it. No, because we already did what? Programmed ourselves for a fantasy image of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just like Christians do. It's easy for us to say the Christians have whitewashed Jesus. Right? Muslims, it's so easy for them to say that. Jesus did not have blonde hair. He didn't look like he's from Scandinavia. Okay, cool. What about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Do you know how he looked? Do you know that he had a huge beard? Oh my God, what do you mean? Do you know that he wore a skirt? How dare you? Izar, what is an izar? That's what they wore regularly. Do you know that it was halfway up his leg? If you see somebody like that, what do you call him today? Backward, fundamentalist, extremist, let's call the feds on him. If you see someone walking into the masjid looking like that, you would say it's because of people like you that we don't advance. He wore a turban. Oh my God. He had braids. Okay.
Yeah.
He wore eyeliner. Oh my God. Okay, you've taken it too far here. No, I can't believe that. He used a toothbrush in public. He walked barefooted. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If that's our standard, then we don't need their packaging. Because you see it, you're like, you know, when this is key. I love this analogy. I read it a long time ago, and I have my own twist to it. But they say if you're ever attracted to someone who does not follow God's way, like an open sinner or a disbeliever, just remember that they don't clean themselves up after using the bathroom. You guys take it for granted because you were all cleaned with water since you were babies. You know these superstars? They don't know that. You think they're superstar anymore? I'll tell you what they are. They're super poopy. They walk around with poop in their bags. How can you be attracted to such a person anymore? Right? You start having, you're like, wow. But in our community, if one of the uncles comes and he smells sweaty, right, because of his hygiene, or one of the ladies because she's wearing multiple layers of clothing to cover herself, and she doesn't smell like she's got not bed, bath, and beyond. What's the other one? Body and bath? Body and bath works, right? It doesn't smell like those things. You're like, ew, that's nasty. She's tahira though. She just made wudu. He made wudu. I'm not saying this is okay. I'm not encouraging you to be stinky. That's not the point. But we're talking about the difference between tahara and najasa, right? What is our scale? What is our standard of beauty? Because like right now, somebody may get emotional when they talk about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they're like, yeah, but I want my husband to be clean shaven. I thought you loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or guys, the guys is like, yeah, Khadija, man, mother of the believers. Do you know what she used to wear? Do you want a woman that wears like that? No, I want a Barbie doll. That's what we've been programmed, right? I want the Muslim model in like pure matrimony or something. That's the imaging we get. It's not correct imaging. وَهُوَ الْمَسْجِدُ الْأَقْصَى. Okay, so that's the official name of the masjid, al-Masjid al-Aqsa. That's the name that Allah mentions in the Quran. And Aqsa means distant. So distant from the Kaaba is the center. What did Allah do with this? الَّذِي بَارَكَ اللَّهُ حَوْلَهُ. This is called a style of Arabic which is paraphrasing the Quran in regular language. So what does Allah say? من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله. The one that we place divine blessings all around. The reason Sham as a region is blessed is because Aqsa is in it. So Aqsa is the center of Sham, and then everything surrounding Aqsa becomes blessed by virtue of Aqsa being there. الذي بارك الله حوله. وَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِ إِسْحَاقَ. And Allah placed divine goodness in the children of Ishaq. But that also means, when we said baraka, means kathra. It means multitude. So Allah made the progeny of Isaac plentiful. Okay? كَمَا بَارَكَ فِي أَوْلَادِ إِسْمَاعِيلِ. Just like He made the children of Ismail plentiful. وَكَانَ فِيهِمْ أنبياء وملوك. This is going back to Awlad Ishaq. Okay? You guys added that to your book? Because I know some of you were missing some of the section. Right? Wasn't it here that you were missing things? It should be kama baraka. Kama. This word, kama. Just like He did. وَكَانَ فِيهِمْ. And among them, meaning among the children, it could be among the children of Isaac and Ishmael, or specifically the children of Isaac. And that's more likely, because the children of Ishmael, there wasn't kings among them. And only one prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So وَكَانَ فِيهِمْ أَنْبِيَاءُ. Anbiya is the plural of Nabi. And what did we say Nabi means? One who receives revelation, one who gets to have information of the unseen, and what was the other one? So exposed to the unseen and receiving revelation. Okay? وَمُلُوكٌ. Muluk is the plural of Malik, which is king. Because the children of Israel, eventually they become the children of Israel. Israel hasn't shown up in the story yet, because that's the son of Isaac, who is also known as Jacob, Ya'qub. And that's why he moves on and he says, وَكَانَ لِإِسْحَاقَ. And for Ishaq was a son, وَلَدٌ إِسْمُهُ يَعْقُوبُ. His name was Ya'qub, Jacob. وَكَانَ نَبِيًّا. And Jacob was a prophet. وَكَانَ يَعْقُوبُ لَهُ 12 وَلَدًا. And Jacob had 12. So this is the numbering in Arabic. 12. 2 plus 10. It's 12. إثنا عشر ولدا, he had 12 sons. منهم يوسف بن يعقوب, of them, among them is Joseph, the son of Jacob. Joseph, the son of Jacob. Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf has a whole surah in the Quran dedicated to him, and this is one of the few places where the Quran has a linear narrative. It begins in the beginning and ends in the end. Usually the Quran has like a circular narrative. منهم يوسف بن يعقوب ويوسف له قصة عجيبة في القرآن. Joseph has an amazing or a wonderful, literally wonderful. You know, when we say wonderful, we don't look at the words we're using. It's full of wonder. That's what wonderful is. I was like, how you doing? Wonderful. Like you're full of wonders? But here, that's the meaning. Joseph has a wonderful story, a story full of wonders in the Quran. وَإِلَيْكَ هَذِهِ الْقِصَّةَ, and to you. Ilayka is here. Here you go, this story. So right now he's offering you the story. He is presenting. And I present. When you say ilayka, it means I present to you. So like I say, ilaykum murad. What does that mean? I present to you murad. Okay. وَإِلَيْكَ هَذِهِ الْقِصَّةَ, so I present to you this story. So the next story is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, full of lessons, of course. But just as an intro to it, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam asked his people, Muhammad, he says, "Man akramun nas?" Who is the most noble of all people? The answer to that was Yusuf. Because he's Yusuf, a prophet, the son of Yaqub, a prophet, the son of Ishaq, a prophet, and the son of Ibrahim, a prophet. And there is no one that has this lineage. This is a very, very special lineage. So the Prophet ﷺ tells us what makes someone special. It's like, yes, we are from the offspring of King Cyrus in Persia. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. This is what's special. But is it simply lineage? No. We said a very important lesson before. The Prophet ﷺ says, "Man abta'a bihi amaluhu lam yusri' bihi nasabuhu." Man abta'a bihi amaluhu lam yusri' bihi nasabuhu. Whoever is slowed down due to their lack of deeds will not be pushed forward due to their lineage. Lineage did not help Abu Lahab. We have a whole surah dedicated to him in the Quran, and he's cursed. Tabbat yada Abi Lahabin wa tab. Not because he looked ugly. He physically looked like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it's because of the beliefs and the actions that he had. Okay. May Allah protect us from being deceived because of something related to our background. Your background does not help you except if your actions and beliefs push you forward. Okay, so we're going to talk inshallah in the future about the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. So I want you to read ahead so you're a bit familiar with the words before we come to class tomorrow inshallah.
So
Any questions?
Yeah, I was just about to ask, does that mean that the translation for the story of Ibrahim is due this week or tomorrow?
It's always due whenever you do it.
The final draft. You said
The final draft.
Submit the final draft, right?
I thought the final draft is sent after every rough draft.
Oh.
Every section. Not the
I
whole
understood it
story.
being at the end of the chapter, which is why.
No, this is the end of a book, not a chapter. We just finished the whole book
Or
called the Book of Ibrahim. No. Every individual chapter, you do a rough draft, we come to class, we clean it up, it becomes a final draft, you send that.
So no physical copy?
No, I don't need a physical copy. We're trying to save planet Earth. So how do we do it? Do you go to like a green protest?
No one stops singing.
You stop what?
Singing.
Yeah, that's right. And you go to the masjid. Yes.
Ismail and Ishaq, is there any difference in status among them that we believe? Like is one higher than the other?
Well, so yeah, it's good that you asked this question. Higher in the sense of age, Ismail is older. Higher in the sense of what he produced, the Kaaba is greater.
Could you say the Prophet ﷺ as well as being from his lineage?
From his lineage, the Prophet ﷺ being there. But in the sense of numbers of prophets from the lineage of Ishaq, the majority of them are from there. So there is different distinguishing factors. I wouldn't say it's black and white, but it really depends on how you look at it. And we believe in both of them, we honor both of them, we love both of them. We don't, when we say this word of we don't distinguish or differentiate between them, as in how much love, dedication, and belief we have in them. But if Allah has distinguished them, then we distinguish too. That's key, by the way. When people say, we believe in all of them the same. No, we don't. We believe in them, but they're not all the same because Allah says they're not all the same. تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Those were the messengers, we made some above others in virtue. So that's very important. Again, there is lingo when people are politically correct that doesn't match what Islam says, unfortunately. So we can say we believe in them, we honor them, but we believe Muhammad is the greatest, whether they like it or not. That's it. And why? Is it because we're like being prejudiced towards him? No, because Allah made him the greatest. So he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Ana sayyidu waladi Adam wala fakhr." I am the master, as in the leader of all of humanity, and I don't say this boastfully. So what are you saying it as? That sounds pretty boastful. Who put him in that station? He didn't ask for it. He didn't want to be a prophet. He didn't know this stuff. Allah selected him. Istifa. It all goes back to what Allah decides. Right? What made Yusuf special? He had 11 other brothers. Same parents. Same environment. What happened? Divine selection. Istifa. Yes?
Can you explain the ayah where it's لَا نُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّن رُسُلِهِ?
That's the one I just mentioned. So we don't distinguish between any of them in believing in them, in honoring them. So that's the thing of reconciling these two. Is we believe in all of them the same, meaning we don't say we believe in some and reject some as others do. So we believe in Jesus, others don't. We believe in Moses, others don't. But we believe all of them came from Allah, taught the same thing. But then if Allah says that some are greater than others, then we have to believe in them. And that's the other ayah. So those two, they don't conflict actually. So لَا نُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّن رُسُلِهِ. We do not distinguish in believing in any of his messengers. Because again, the people of the scripture in the time of revelation did. That was their whole thing, is the Jews rejected Jesus. So they're like, we take some and we reject some. Some of them we accept and some of them we don't. For us, we say we accept all of them if they were sent by Allah. So this is key now. Don't put Buddha in there. Why not?
Because we don't have any evidence.
Don't put Guru Nanak there. Sikh community is our ally politically right now. Guru Nanak is not a prophet of God. It's a monotheistic religion, but they believe God dwells in Guru Nanak. What kind of monotheism is that? It's not radical. Thank you. Yeah, it's not prophetic. It's not correct. So, yes, there were teachers and reformers in human history. If Allah did not tell us a person is a messenger, we don't claim he's a messenger. And if we know from the person's teachings that he did not preach the same message, he's not a messenger. What was the message? I want it to be said very briefly. What is the message of all the messengers of God?
Tawheed?
Yeah, in English.
The oneness of God?
I just said Sikhism is a monotheistic religion. What does the oneness of God mean?
Worship Allah alone with no partners.
Who is Allah?
The one true God.
Yeah, so they all came to inform people who the one and only true God is. Because there's many gods. Pantheon of gods. The one and only true God, who he is, who he's not. How to live according to his way. And you will be facing him on Judgment Day. 3 things we said all the prophets agreed to. In Arabic, Tawheed, Risala, Akhirah. But you have to explain those things. You don't just say Islamic monotheism and messengership and the next life. You can go and interpret that in so many different ways. The point behind Islamic monotheism is the following. Who God is, who he is not. Messengership, the model by which we are to serve this one true God. Day of Judgment, we will be asked about what we did about the first 2. But not just us, everybody else too. Everyone will be asked, what did you do about those 3 things? The things before. Okay, any other questions?
2 questions.
Our time is up, but go ahead.
2 quick questions. First, so on this planet, there are only few places that Allah made blessed or purified, right? Mecca, Medina, and Baitul.
Good question. So this is talking about one concept. I wonder if you're asking about if they are haram. Haram is a sanctuary. That's only 2 places, Mecca and Medina. Quds is not a haram. But those 3 places are called the 3 masajid that Allah himself has made special. That you may go to for pilgrimage. We only go to pilgrimage to these 3 places.
Second question, the 5 prophets that are higher.
The greatest messengers, Ulul Azmi min al-Rusul.
Can you please list them?
Yes. So we'll list them first in chronological order, meaning who came first in human history. Nuh, Musa, Noah, Moses. No. Nuh, Ibrahim, Moses, Musa, Isa, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. In their status, Muhammad is number 1, followed by Ibrahim, followed by Musa, followed by Isa, followed by Nuh. Those are called Ulul Azmi min al-Rusul. The messengers with the greatest resolve. Who made them as such? Allah. This is not about being prejudiced or making things up. We don't do that. Alright, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Good to meet you, brothers. Allah bless you guys. Thank you for being with us. We kind of get a little wild in class, so what happens in class stays in class. Assalamu alaikum.
It's a pretty interesting show. I enjoyed it. They people like Dr. John
the only thing I'll probably
Also,
get
he's a therapist, so like he has background
That
in
makes it a lot.
counseling.
Yeah, so just deep conversations.
Yeah, so I enjoy that. There's Safina Society podcast. That's led by Dr. Shadi Wesley.
Oh, really? That's wow.
Oh, yes, man.
I love him. Sacred God. Safina Society podcast. Dr. Shadi, yeah, he was the guy that responded to Dr. Jonathan.
Yeah, that's what I came like. Oh,
Yes, speak more. He's awesome too. The way their podcast is structured though is like, it's interesting because they start with season 1, and from my understanding is at first they're kind of proving the existence of God.
Yeah. Water.
It's really good.
Green. It's just straight coffee, just chilling. That's pretty cool.
If you guys want to grab something and demo them, they don't mind. You don't have to like have cash. That's pretty good.
Or you can just like water.
Gator's also water. Gator right now.
Juice. But before I forget, so the comedian that you mentioned, you know how before we were talking about comedians, it's oftentimes they cross the balance of the.
Yeah.
Does he do his job of not crossing that?
That's just one. From my understanding, I haven't, like, he hasn't released any new specials recently.
Yeah.
But, no, I don't think he crosses the balance.
Yeah,
no, that's good. I was asking the and I want to ask him, but like comedians especially, like they often use it actually for buying limits. And like this essentially asking if it's a comedian.
Yeah,
knowing that it's a lie. But he's like, there are different ways to go about it. Like some comedians that he's seen do a good job in kind of not necessarily saying that the joke they're about to tell is the truth. Like some comedians like Kevin Hart are like, this is a true story, this is a true story. And then he goes in and it's like, yeah, it's not a true story.
What do I know?
It's through the knowledge. It's through knowledge. And I just tell them,
It's too.
we had to go check them out. Like, I don't know.
Maz. Couldn't find anyone named
Oh,
to
no,
the
okay. Chef okay.
You better write. You gotta tell me to write. I guess. I got IOK chain.
Yeah, it's IOK Shane. Okay.
Wait, what is it?
No, it's not.
Dude, go on my history. IOK.
I think it's private though.
Mine?
I don't think I want.
Oh, IOK Diamond Cool.
Y'all, so it's like 2 periods, you have another class for
Yeah, so next
When do they start?
10, 15 minutes probably. We're gonna have Rafet and Charlie.
Do I have to say what it's for?
Yeah, just really Gatorade.
Maz, you're a freaking Maz, bro. I'm so hungry. You know what? Because you know what happened? I woke up.
Mashallah.
I woke up right after the I was like, okay. I realized it's only a half hour draft. I was like, dang, I don't need to leave this early. So I fell asleep. When you called me, I sat I woke up. But I slept through my alarm and so you know, I just got up and showered real quick and I left. It's not.
So Sheikh Ahmed,
Yes, sir.
what about comedy skits? Is that considered okay? This back to our conversation just about lying, right? What would you?
Comedy skit.
Because technically they are
A comedy skit is different.
like SNL skits, for instance. They're
Yeah, those are-
portraying a character, right? Or they're pretending to be, for instance, like the president of the United States, or
Yeah, a skit by its nature. I mean, whenever you're watching anything like a movie or a skit, right? It's kind of assumed this is not like, yeah, you're portraying people, but it's not like,
it's not a lie.
yeah, it's not like, usually don't
Like when it's, especially when it's a comedy skit, you're not necessarily portraying true events. You're just making fun of a person or a situation.
Okay, but it could be wrong, not necessarily for, lying, or say negatively portraying someone or making fun of an individual.
Yeah, that would be a whole different issue.
Oh man.
That would be a whole different issue.
You're just trying to make fun of people, aren't you?
No, dude, it's like you're walking on a tightrope. You want to be like, if you want to establish skits led by Muslim folks, they're gonna have to really be careful about.
Yeah, but they don't have to portray real individuals. It could be a comedy skit without the portrayal of, right?
So, for instance, let's just use examples, shit. Like Chappelle Show, like the first one, playing Bixby, right? What is that crossing the bound?
I actually missed the whole Chappelle era.
Okay.
I was out of the country.
So essentially, it's Dave Chappelle who grew up in a household. He was blind, right? He's portraying this character that's blind.
Fake character.
Yeah, it's a fake character.
Okay.
He's blind, but he is, a proponent and a person in the KKK movement, right? And he speaks out against. Honestly, I can't really explain it. You just need to watch it. But in that situation, the character he's portraying is fake.
Okay.
Right. So that in itself is lying, right?
No.
Why not? Why wouldn't that be?
How did you know the character was fake?
I mean, it's a skit.
Huh?
It's a skit.
So going in, watching the skit, you knew it was something that's not, he's not portraying the truth. Lying is like when the person walks away thinking that you've told the truth about something, but you've actually not told the truth about something. Right? When you know, like, for example, when you watch a play or a skit or a movie, you know it's not based on true events. That's why, like, when, certain movies you watch them, sometimes it says, this is based on true events.
Okay.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like they'll say that specifically. This is based on true events or whatever, right? Tell you, hey, this actually happened. Now, even when they say that, they usually, this is based on true events. Just in the nature of that statement, like, this is based on true events, but we've put things in there that are not necessarily that all happened.
And that would be totally cool. Wow.
I think there are fiqh opinions out there which kind of just generally that generally, that hold all of it as impermissible, but I don't see it as a strong argument. I don't see it as a strong argument because you know watching those things that it's not real and the truth is not being portrayed.
Cool. Y'all came at a good day because we're not doing Arabic. Because when we do Arabic, we get like roasted and
Who said we're not doing Arabic?
Bring fiqh, right?
I know. I asked you to bring your fiqh back because that's all I asked you to do.
What? Dang. You're gonna roast Laz today? I'm excited. I'm looking forward to that. You better not sleep in class.
I don't sleep in these classes. It's only my UCI classes that I sleep.
With that relationship, is there
Two things. Originally, I think it started out. It was like
start from a real understanding.
when it was
Or do you start with like a slight understanding?
myself.
Yeah.
And then there's this videos by saying
not really. It starts with letters,
how it's important because to cover their heads. As
what is the word?
like a way to be physically Muslim as they're walking interacting in society.
This is our
Now I held that belief a little bit, but now it's but I also like that doesn't mean
basically
someone's
how
all
much
cards about
which ritual prayer, how to be the guy,
so those are
basically like
two reasons.
can you show me prayer?
And also I think like
for
Muslims in America to be like visibly and socially and culturally Muslim.
I mean,
obviously to
this one doesn't
sort of fashion and clothing lines and whatnot.
Did you get this from, what's his name? What's his name? Forgot his name. Oh, take him out.
No, not we went to like a store, like a cloth, and
Can you call sisters and son?
and then we went to a tailor, and he like measurements, and he's like, okay.
Straight up, like
Yeah, he was like, oh, do you want this? Do you want this?
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so I was just confused.
Why are you spreading these lines?
These hands work.
I actually was writing notes on my phone history.
It is, but I got it with rocks, so it doesn't count.
What do you
I really like the environment. I like that. Yeah, I was like,
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. Take out your fiqh packets, assuming that you brought them. I went back and forth trying to decide if I should leave off from where Sheikh Farhan left off, if I should if I should begin from where Sheikh Farhan left off, or if I should just start from the beginning. And I decided that I think it would be best to start from the beginning. So those of you that were here when Sheikh Farhan went over the first few lessons, this will just be a review for you. Perhaps there will be things that I mentioned that he didn't mention, or perhaps I will summarize certain things that he mentioned in detail. But we'll start from the beginning. Everyone have their packet? So this specific course, it's designed based on 10 lessons. And the focus of these 10 lessons is the fiqh of purification and the fiqh of salah. So it's fiqh al-tahara, and fiqh al-salah. And I will throw in some Arabic here and there because at this point you have studied Arabic. Whether you know Arabic or not is questionable, but you have studied some. But this course is fiqh al-tahara and fiqh al-salah. Fiqh al-tahara and fiqh al-salah are both idafa phrases. Fiqh al-taharati wa fiqh al-salah. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, in a hadith that is usually taught to students when they begin learning fiqh, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqqihhu fid din." I want you guys to write this hadith down and to memorize it as well. He said that "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqqihhu fid din," that whomsoever Allah intends goodness for, He gives him an understanding in the religion. "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqqihhu fid din." Man over here, it means whomsoever, right? And man over here is being used as a particle of jazm. Man over here is being used as a particle of jazm. This is a conditional sentence. It's a conditional sentence. And man over here, it has the ability to make two words or two verbs majzoom, in a state of jazm. As we've taken before, that present tense verbs are considered mu'rabun, changing. They can change between being marfu', mansub, and majzoom. Man is an instrument or a particle that we say tajzimu fi'lain. It makes two verbs majzoom. So you have man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqqihhu fid din. Whomsoever Allah intends goodness for, yufaqqihhu fid din, He gives that person an understanding of the religion, or He gives that person understanding in the religion. The first verb that is majzoom is yurid. Anyone know what the origin of yurid is? Huh? Arada. What's the mudari'? Yuridu. Arada. Yuridu. Arada. Yuridu. Over here you have a ya that is between the ra and the dal. That ya is omitted. That dal is why is that ya omitted? Anyone know? What's the verb? This is the verb. Yuridu. Yuridu. Okay? I said men is doing what here? Huh? It's making the verb majzoom, right? So I'm going to replace the dhamma with a sukoon, right? The issue now that I have is I have two sukoons that follow one another. This is called iltiqa'u sakinain. That you have two sukoons that follow one another. When that happens, you drop that ya and you end up with yurid. Is that clear? You end up with yurid. So he said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran." The kasra and the dal over there is for the sake of readability, because if you have sukoon here and sukoon here, you can't read it, right? So what you do is you put a kasra there. Clear? Yes? Man yuridillahu bihi khayran, that whomsoever Allah intends goodness for, yufaqihu. The word is faqqaha yufaqihu, to give an understanding. To give an understanding. So yufaqihu, Allah gives him an understanding fid deen, in the religion. Do we get that? Do we get the meaning and the grammatical function of man? Yes? Fahimtum? You guys went over this hadith before?
Yeah.
Sheikh Farhan mentioned it?
Mentioned it, yes.
Okay, but now you know the grammatical function. You get how it works, correct?
So the two words that became wisdom are yurid
And yufaqih. The verb is yufaqihu. Yufaqihu. And ha is him. He gives him an understanding of the religion.
One question.
Naam.
So over here, deen, is it religion in general or is it specific to the fiqh?
It's religion in general. It's religion in general.
And this is a hadith, right?
Huh?
Hadith, right? This is a hadith?
No, this is a hadith. So we'll quickly go over the definition of fiqh, right? Now, anytime you have definitions in Arabic or in Islamic sciences, usually a lot of times what you say is, for example, you'll find in a book of fiqh in Arabic, they'll say the meaning of fiqh lughatan. What does it mean linguistically? What does the word fiqh mean linguistically? The word fiqh means linguistically, it comes from the verb faqiha. And faqiha means to understand. Faqiha means to understand. So that's linguistically, right? But we're not talking about linguistically right now. What we care about is what they called? No. Istilahan. What does it mean technically? Technically, as written, as seen in your slides, it is the knowledge of the practical rules of Islamic law derived from its detailed proofs, which are the Quran, the Sunnah, Ijma', scholarly consensus, and Qiyas, which you can understand as analogical reasoning. You guys remember Qiyas? Yes? The definition that is usually given for fiqh istilahan is something along the lines of Did anyone write this down when Sheikh Farhan mentioned it? No? Anyone have it? Huh? من أدلتها التفصيلية. Okay. So istilahan, technically what is fiqh? It is al-ilm, it is knowledge. Bil-ahkam al-shar'iyya, it is knowledge of the legal rulings. Al-amaliyya, the practical legal rulings. So it is knowledge of the practical legal rulings. Al-amaliyya refers to those actions or the knowledge that can be acted upon. Right? So it is knowledge of the practical legal rulings. Al-muktasabati, those that are derived from adillatiha at-tafsiliyya, from the detailed evidences or the detailed proofs. Is that clear?
So ahkam al-shari, that's
legal rulings of the Sharia. So knowledge of the practical legal rulings or practical rules of Islamic law, al-muktasaba, that are derived from, that are taken from, min adillatiha at-tafsiliyya, from its detailed proofs, which are 4 Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', scholarly consensus, and Qiyas. Now I wrote this down in Arabic so that you could write it and memorize it. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he described fiqh with a different definition, right? This definition that we've written, al-ilmu bil-ahkam al-shar'iyya al-amaliyya al-muktasaba min adillatiha at-tafsiliyya, it's what's kind of become known as the common definition, right? Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he described it as معرفة النفس ما لها وما عليها. معرفة النفس ما لها وما عليها, which basically means معرفة النفس is an individual's knowledge. ما لها means literally that which is for it, that which belongs to it. So an individual's knowledge of their own rights. وَمَا عَلَيْهَا, and their responsibilities. So مَعْرِفَةُ النَّفْس, person's knowledge or an individual's knowledge, مَا لَهَا وَمَا عَلَيْهَا, of their rights and their responsibilities. Now the definition of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah is considered to be a very, very broad definition, right? That technically includes not only fiqh, but includes theology, includes articles of faith. Right? So it's a very broad definition. The definition that we gave, al-ilmu bil-ahkam al-shar'iyya, till the end, this is a more constricted and precise definition. And if we wanted to summarize all of this, we could say fiqh is knowledge or understanding of Islamic law. Knowledge or understanding of Islamic law. What we find generally is when fuqaha, when scholars of fiqh, they defined terms, and even scholars of usul al-fiqh, when they define terms, they used very, very specific wording and very, very careful wording, right? Because they wanted to be very, very precise. Just like, for example, when a lawyer writes something, they're trying to be very precise and very exact. In a similar manner, fuqaha had the same methodology. So knowledge, when they, for example, when they say knowledge of practical legal rulings, it's referring to laws that are associated to a person's actions or a person's conduct. So we're talking about purification, we're talking about prayer, we're talking about family, we're talking about commercial law, marriage, divorce, contracts, inheritance, all of it. And it does, this definition, it excludes knowledge that is related to arkanul iman, the pillars of faith, because that is more in the realm of what's known as aqidah or creed. Huh?
What do you say,
Arkanul iman, the pillars of faith. Okay. And these are all some, what they call mabadi'. These are all some introductory points. Mabadi' means like introductory or foundational principles or points that are usually mentioned when studying any science. Right? You'll talk about the definition of the term, when did the science come about, how was it derived, where is this knowledge derived from, what is the scope or the subject matter of this science, what's the purpose, what's the goal of it. Right? So the subject or the scope, the subject matter is the actions of a person who is legally responsible. What's that called in Arabic? What's someone who is legally responsible? Huh? Mukallafun. Mukallafun means they are legally responsible. The word in Arabic is mukallafun, which we understand as legally responsible. Sara, what word does mukallafun come from? Taklif is what's called the verbal noun, al-masdar. Huh? Taklif is the verbal noun, right? The word mukallafun comes from the verb kallafa. Kallafa. To commission someone with something. To kind of burden someone with something. Maryam, what's the mudari'? No. Kallafa yukallifu. And Maz, do you remember how we get the fa'il from a verb like this?
No.
You could have tried, that was such a cop-out. You could have tried, that was such a cop-out.
I generally don't.
So just to be clear, whose friends are here today? Najib's friends or your friends?
Mutual.
Huh?
One each.
One each?
No, mutual, but one, no, okay, wrong. Mutual.
One each? Which one exactly is your
Mutual.
Okay. That means we can embarrass both of you then. Because we like to embarrass people in front of their friends. I was going to embarrass Maz, but Najib told me it's mutual, so we'll embarrass both of you. I don't mind if you bring your friends to class, but just be ready to be embarrassed. Right? How do we get the fa'il from yukallifu? Najib, do you remember? Iman.
Would it be, would you have to add
Sarah?
You're saying how we identify it's in the app, right?
Is it the me?
Huh?
Is it the me?
So I take the mudari' and I replace the ya with. You guys remember this? We went over it once before. Right? Mukallifun is the one that is doing the taklif. Right? So the person that the taklif is being done onto is called a mukallaf. So we use the same word, but we change the vowel sign. Huh? Excuse me?
That's maf'ulun bihi.
Naam, this is maf'ulun bihi. So this is the fa'il and this is the maf'ul.
So kallafa means
To commission someone with something, to burden someone with something, to entrust them with something.
okay.
So that's why we translate the word mukallafun as the one who is legally responsible, because they have been entrusted or commissioned, right? If they fulfill the conditions of reaching the age of puberty and being sane and so on and so forth, right? They become mukallafun. They are now legally responsible in the sight of Allah, because Allah has done taklif upon them.
So kallafa is the person that's commissioning.
Mukallifun,
Is the person that's commissioning.
yes, that's why it's the fa'il. And mukallafun is the person that is being commissioned, being made responsible. They're receiving a burden. Does that make sense? Okay.
So when writing this, is there a specific order, like do you write fa'il, maf'ul bihi, and masdar, or does it not matter?
Usually you write madi, mudari, amr, right? Then either fa'il, maf'ul, masdar, or masdar, fa'il, maf'ul. So al-mukallaf is a person who is considered to be mature, having reached the age of puberty, and to be sane. Right? Also realize that fiqh is generally divided into 2 or 3 categories. There's 2 in your slides. I believe Sheikh Farhan mentioned the 3rd, right? And so, but 3 is easier. The classification of 3 is easier. In your slides you see fiqhul ibadat. Fiqhul ibadat, which is the fiqh of worship, right? When we talk about worship, we're obviously talking about prayer, fasting, zakah, hajj, all devotional acts, right? Is that clear? Fiqhul ibadat. What type of phrase is it, Najib? Is it an nadafa phrase? Fiqhul ibadati. You guys are going to hate me, but I want you guys to see it. We didn't study all of this Arabic just not to put it into practice, right? Fiqhul ibadat. Now, fiqhul ibadat. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Buniya al-Islamu ala khams. Famous hadith. Maryam. Buni al-Islamu ala khams. What's Buni al-Islamu ala khams mean?
Islam is made up of 5.
Huh?
Islam is built on 5.
Islam is built on 5 pillars. Islam is built on 5 pillars. Good. What are those 5 pillars? Shahadatu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah, wa iqam as-salah, establishing prayer, wa ita is-zakah, and paying the yearly obligational charity, wa sawmi Ramadan, and fasting the month of Ramadan, wa hajj al-bayt man istata'a ilayhi sabila, that, and performing hajj, right? What does buniya mean?
Building.
Huh?
Building.
Buniya means building. Sarah, what does buniya mean?
Built.
Huh?
Built.
Built? Who built? Do you understand the question?
Yeah. Grammatically, we're saying
Yes. Look, this is what's going on. Mona, I think you're going to answer it. But بنى الله الإسلام على خمس. Allah, He constructed or formed or built Islam upon 5. Clear? This is active. This is considered active. When I say bunya, it becomes passive. So look at the first sentence. Bana Allahu al-Islam. Allah formed or built Islam. It's Islamah because it's the thing that Allah constructed, correct? Bana Allahu al-Islam. But when I make the verb passive, bunya, right? No longer do you have lafzul jalala there. You don't have the word of majesty there anymore. But rather you have Islam in its place. And when Islam goes in its place, it now becomes marfu'. Buniya al-Islamu ala khamsin. Understood? Yes?
What is active and passive called in terms?
Active, they call it ma'loom. And passive, they call it mabniyun lil majhool. Mabniyun lil majhool.
Why is it turning into marfu'?
Because it's taking the place of the fa'il.
So it does take the good man function.
So we say Islam is built upon. Right? Huh? No, lil majhool. The other common example that I've referenced before أنزل الله فيه القرآن. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent down in it, we're talking about in it, in the month of Ramadan, Al-Quran. Allah sent down in it, or in this month, He sent down the Quran. But yet that's not what the Quran says. It says أنزل فيه القرآن. The month of Ramadan is the one that in which the Quran was sent down in it. Right? The same thing has been done here. Right? What's meant is Allah sent down the Quran in it. But the phrasing is different. أنزل فيه القرآن. The Quran was sent down in it. And we said that a verb is made passive for a number of reasons. Right? A verb can be made passive for a number of reasons. A possible reason a verb is made passive because the doer of the verb is unknown. Right? So I say ضرب محمد خالدا. ضرب محمد خالدا. Who hit Khalid? Muhammad. But let's say I don't know who hit Khalid. I just see Khalid on the floor beat up in agonizing pain. And I don't see any culprit. Say ضرب Khalid, and Khalid was beat. Don't know who did it. So it could be made majhul because we don't know who the fa'il is. It could also be made majhul because for some reason I don't want to mention, I know who the fa'il is, but I don't want to mention it. Perhaps out of fear of whatever will come about if I mention the fa'il. So I don't mention it. قُتِلَ مُحَمَّدٌ. Muhammad was killed. I know who the killer is, but I don't want to reveal it. Because I want to keep it hidden. I don't want to reveal that information, or revealing that information will cause me to get in trouble. Also, another reason it is done, and this is the reason that we can assume that it is done, in the hadith Buniyya al-Islam and also in the verse Unzila fihi al-Quran is to highlight the maf'ulun bihi. To highlight the maf'ulun bihi. To give an extra emphasis on the maf'ulun bihi. So when we say Buniyya al-Islamu ala khams, that Islam was built upon 5 pillars, as opposed to saying Allah built Islam upon 5 pillars. The word Islam gets lost. Islam was built upon 5 pillars. But when you say Buniyya al-Islam, Islam was built. Islam now becomes like a main subject. Just like when you say Anzal Allahu fihi al-Quran, Allah sent down in it the Quran. It's different. If you want to emphasize the Quran, you say Unzila fihi al-Quran. The Quran was revealed in it. Right? So it's sometimes done for the purpose of emphasizing the thing that is being mentioned. Now, we mentioned fiqhul ibadat. When we think of actions of worship, we think about prayer and fasting, giving charity and performing hajj. Usually, when you think about acts of ibadat, wudu and ghusl don't come to your mind, correct? Right. So why do we study wudu and purification, or this entire concept of purification? Why do we study it under the chapter or under the section or the title of fiqhul ibadat?
Because it's a prerequisite to them.
Huh?
Prerequisite to them.
Because it's a?
Prerequisite.
Because it's a prerequisite to prayer, right? It's a prerequisite to prayer. Scholars, they have a ruling, they say, or like a law or a maxim. They say, ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Anyone ever heard this? Know what it means? I believe he did. I think I remember seeing it on the board once. So if he mentioned it, do you know what it means?
Like something that like something that's wajib, an action that's wajib. If there's something that you need to do the action, then that is also wajib.
Good. So if there's a prerequisite, if there's something that is needed, to complete a wajib, an obligatory action, if you need something is an essential component or prerequisite to complete a wajib, then that thing in itself becomes wajib. So مَا لَا يَتِمُّ الْوَاجِبُ إِلَّا بِهِ, that thing which the wajib cannot be completed except by it. مَا لَا يَتِمُّ الْوَاجِبُ إِلَّا بِهِ, that thing which the wajib cannot be completed, yatimmu, for it to be complete. So that thing which the wajib cannot be completed except by it, إِلَّا بِهِ فَهُوَ وَاجِبٌ, then that thing in itself, it becomes wajib also. Is that clear? So obviously prayer cannot be complete without tahara, without purification. Therefore it becomes a part of the wajib, it becomes a part of that which a person who is mukallaf has to study. Right? And because salah is in ibadat, salah is in the section of actions of worship, then also tahara, purification, goes under the actions of worship. Is that clear? The second section is fiqhul mu'amalat. Fiqhul mu'amalat, the fiqh of transactions. Transactions deals with laws of commerce, deals with divorce in marriage, inheritance, And then the last category, anyone remember it? I know Sheikh Farhan mentioned it. Huh? فقه الحدود والجنايات. لا إله إلا الله. فقه الحدود والجنايات. No, I'm having issues today. فقه الحدود والجنايات. What's فقه الحدود والجنايات, Maryam?
Prescribed punishment and offenses or crimes.
Huh?
Prescribed punishments and offenses or crimes.
Yes. So the fiqh of, what did you say for hudud?
Prescribed punishment.
Yeah, prescribed punishments. You can look at them as capital punishments. But the fiqh of punishments, wal jinayat, and the fiqh of offenses or crimes. What is the purpose of the goal of studying the fiqh? The purpose of the goal of studying the fiqh is to act upon the rules of the sharia so that a person can attain the pleasure of Allah and success both in this world and the next. How does this thing work? Like this, like this. Okay. The next slide is definition of fiqh terminology, right? Yeah, I just did that. Just read over it. Didn't I? There you go. Okay, definitions of fiqh terminology. Okay. Dalil or evidence. Right, in Arabic, dalilun, and in English, evidence. Dalil refers to a textual evidence that is either a verse from the Quran or a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, when you talk about the Quran and the hadith, there are two parts. There's the authenticity, right, which is known as the thubut. The authenticity is known as the thubut. And the meaning, which is known as the dalala. Dalalatun. Now you could have a proof that its authenticity is established and is definitive. And you could have that same proof, its meaning is also definitive. So for example, if I said, if I gave all of you your homework, right? And I said, turn in your homework tomorrow. If I said, turn in your homework tomorrow, right? Now, I authentically said it because you heard it. Okay? Now when I said turn in your homework tomorrow, am I like commanding you to turn in your homework tomorrow? Or am I advising you to turn in your homework tomorrow? Because doing your homework can be beneficial and you'll learn. Which one am I doing? Huh?
Depends on your tone.
Right? Depends on my tone. So there's a lot of things that go into this. Right? When the Prophet ﷺ, he says, for example, that إذا دخل أحدكم المسجد فلا يجلس حتى يصلي ركعتين. That whenever any one of you enters a masjid, right, do not sit down until you pray 2 rak'ahs. Do not sit down until you pray 2 rak'ahs. Right? Is it a command? Or is it a recommendation? Huh? Sounds like a command. So every single time that you enter a masjid, you have to pray 2 rak'ahs?
According to some schools, yeah.
Huh?
According to some school of ours, yes.
So it's a command. I didn't ask you according to some schools of thought. What does it sound like?
It's highly recommended.
It's highly recommended, but it's a command.
But it depends on like the word that's being used to.
فَلَا يَجْلِسْ. Don't sit down. It's a prohibition.
Well, I guess you're gonna have to look at all the other things that he said about praying, and you have to look at in the context of salah.
Well, isn't it a very clear command? فَلَا يَجْلِسْ.
Could be situational or the time of the day.
What if you enter upon a time when you're not allowed to pray?
You guys are asking me questions, I'm asking questions, guys.
No, sorry.
So is it a command or a recommendation, guys? Which one?
It's a command, but it reflects the hierarchy. That there might be a time of day you can't pray, or there might be a situation that you're entering upon that would
Okay, let's avoid the times where you can't pray. Okay? Let's avoid the times you can't pray. You enter the masjid after the adhan of Isha has been called.
The adhan of Isha has been called?
Yeah. And there's like 15 minutes to adhan. There's 15 minutes to iqamah. You walk in. Yeah. So this is obviously clearly not a time that you're prohibited from praying.
You pray.
Huh?
You pray.
You pray? Like I must pray?
Okay, I don't know what you're getting at, but if you.
I'm asking you a question. I must pray, or am I advised to pray?
You're advised. I don't know why. That's my gut.
But he said, don't sit down until you pray. How can you say I'm advised? Huh? It's both? La ilaha illallah. So like.
Advice to, but it's like the type of advice that's like a command. Well, yeah.
So if I go into the masjid after the adhan of Isha has been called and I sit down without praying, am I sinful? Potentially?
Potentially
Well, it's like a hard question. That's a scholarly question. I don't know why you're asking us that. It's just, we don't know. You tell us. Can we?
What do you think, Mona?
I have no idea.
What do you guys do when you walk into the masjid?
I don't pray.
Huh? You sit down? What do you do? You pray every single time? Every time? So it's an obligation.
That's how I see it.
Huh?
That's how I see it.
That's how you see it? Did we just cover the hadith? Buni al-Islam wa ala khams. Islam was built upon 5 pillars. One of them was iqamatul salah, which is referring to by the consensus of the scholars the 5 daily prayers. Have you obligated something that Allah has not obligated? So the reason we went through that mental exercise is to show you that meaning at times can be speculative, right? That's the whole purpose of that, right? And I presented both arguments to you, right? That when she said it's obligatory, I said, how can you obligate something that Allah hasn't obligated? Right? That's one way of looking at it. Because then a man, he entered upon the Prophet ﷺ and he asked him a series of questions, and then he said, what are the 5 pillars? Or basically, what has Allah obligated? And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned literally the 5 pillars. Literally just the 5 pillars. And the man said, like, La azid wa la anqus. Like, I'm not going to do more than that, I'm not going to do less than that. Right? And that's all I'm going to do. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ said, like, if that's what he does, like, he'll be successful if he's truthful.
But that's bare minimum, right?
Yeah, so if you do bare minimum, technically, from a technical perspective, and you leave off anything other than the bare minimum, right? Technically, you're not sinful. Right? Going back to the question that I asked Sarah, I said that, hey, if I went in and I sat down, would I be sinful?
What about something like hijab? It's called.
It's completely different, right? So
what is the answer again?
I'll get to the answer later. The point of this is that a text, right? A text in itself, when we're talking about text, you have two parts. You have the authenticity and you have the meaning. Okay? When it comes to the Quran, there's no question about the authenticity. Right? When it comes to hadith, there is questions about authenticity. Certain hadith are authentic, certain hadith are good, certain hadith are weak, right? And you studied that with Shaykh Ahmed, right? But whenever we talk about a text, there's authenticity, right? Which we will talk about as thubut, right? Something can be definitive in its authenticity, that you're absolutely sure of its authenticity, and something can be speculative in its authenticity, that you're unsure about the authenticity. It's possible, but it's also not possible. There's that leeway there, okay? And then when it comes to meaning, a text can be very clear in its meaning, right? When Allah says, for example, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, establish prayer. There's no speculative meaning here. Establish prayer means establish prayer. There's only one meaning. But at the same time, there are meanings where the text can be speculative. Scholars could have interpreted it in two different ways, right? And we just kind of gave for you an example right now. Is that clear? So you have technically 4 options. That which is قطعي الثبوت. قطعي الثبوت means that the text in itself is definitive. Sorry, the authenticity of the text is definitive. قطعي الثبوت means the authenticity of the text is definitive. We know for a fact 150% that the authenticity of the text is completely authentic. So قطعي الثبوت and قطعي الدلالة. So it's the authenticity of the text is definitive. And قطعي الدلالة, the meaning of the text is also definitive. There's no ambiguity. That's the first. Is that clear? Yes? The second is where, once again, the text, the authenticity of it is definitive. But what's different here? What's going to be different? Huh? The meaning. The meaning is speculative. So we're going to say قطعي الثبوت and ظني الدلالة. So we're sure that it's authentic, because that's definitive. But the meaning can be interpreted in different ways. Clear? Good. So what's number 3 going to be? No. Okay, so? Yeah. So it's ظني الثبوت. Its authenticity is speculative. But its meaning is definitive. Give you an example. Najib comes to you and he says, I heard the exam is tomorrow. I heard the exam is tomorrow. When is the exam?
It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. His phrase, the exam is tomorrow, right? It's very clear in meaning. You're not like, well, it might be tomorrow, it might be the next. No, it's tomorrow, right? So the meaning is absolutely clear. But what he said before it was, I heard from. You're like, well, who did you hear from? Well, I heard from her, and he gives you this long sanad, right? You're like, dude, there's too many people in that chain. I don't know about it. So you begin to question the authenticity of it. But the meaning is very, very clear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you get the example?
I get the example.
So you get how something could be ظني الثبوت and ظني الثبوت and قطعي الدلالة, right? So for example, you might have scholars that where you have a hadith, right? And certain scholars will look at it and they'll say, you know, everyone in the chain seems to be acceptable. It seems like we can accept this hadith and we'll act upon it. Other scholars will say, you know what, we don't accept this hadith because we're questioning its authenticity, right? So the talk here is about the isnad, the authenticity of it, right? But the actual matan, the actual text of the hadith is very clear for both groups. No one's disputing that, hey, this statement could mean this or this statement could mean that. The dispute is over the authenticity of it. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So the last one then would be, one second, hold your questions. Let's ظني الثبوت قطعي الدلالة. Okay. And then number 4 would be? Yes. These are the 4, okay? Look at your slides. So he says, looking at that slide from the beginning, dalil, evidence, refers to a textual evidence that is either a verse from the Quran or a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it consists of 2 parts. So, one second. Okay. So, two parts, authenticity and meaning. The first is considered, so he breaks it down into two different types. So we're going to put all four that we wrote right now, we're going to break them down into two categories. Number one is definitive proof. When is it considered a definitive proof? When it's number one. قطعي الثبوت and قطعي الدلالة. It's a definitive proof when the authenticity itself is definitive and the meaning is definitive. Okay? Number two, speculative proof. When is it considered a speculative proof? The other three. So he says authenticity is definitive, which is قطعي الثبوت ظني الدلالة, but the meaning is speculative. The other time he says, after the comma, he says ظني الثبوت and قطعي الدلالة, that the authenticity is speculative and the meaning is definitive. And then the last one is both of them are speculative. Do we get this categorization? Yes? Okay. What is usually mentioned in the beginning is the definition of Sharia. The definition of Sharia. Because many times Sharia and fiqh are used as synonyms, right? Or they're used interchangeably. Literally, Sharia means a watering place, right? Or a path. It can mean both, right? But usually the difference that is given between Sharia and fiqh, Sharia is defined as what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated for His servants from religion. So Sharia is the law of Allah. It is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from His servants. Regardless if these rulings are found in the Quran and the Sunnah, all of that composes the Sharia. The most common definition or differentiation between Sharia and fiqh is that Sharia is what I just previously mentioned, and fiqh is the human understanding of that law. So Sharia is what Allah intended, and it is what He revealed, and fiqh is the human understanding of that law. So Sharia is considered to be more general and more inclusive, and Sharia includes both beliefs and deeds, whereas fiqh deals mainly just with deeds. After that, we get into the definitions of fiqh terminology. Okay, the definitions of fiqh terminology. There are 6 rulings according to the Hanafis. That 6 different rulings that can be given to our actions. For the majority of the scholars, and the Malikis and the Hanbalis and the Shafi'is, it's 5. For the Hanafis, it's 6. And as we'll learn, it can also sometimes it's mentioned as 7. Right? 6 or 7, it's technically 7, but you can categorize it into 6. For the rest, it's 5. So these 6 categories that a person's actions can fall into are al-fard, that which is obligatory, al-wajib, that which is mandatory. Then the third would be al-mustahab or al-mandub, that which is recommended. The fourth would be al-mubah, that which is permissible. The fifth would be that which is makruh, And the Hanafis, they have 2 categories of makruh. That's why I said 6 or 7. Right? The Hanafis have 2 categories of makruh. They have makruh tanzihan and makruh tahriman. 2 different levels of makruh, that which is disliked. And the last is haram, that which is prohibited. Now, the majority of scholars, they combine between fard and wajib. To them it's one. There's no obligatory and mandatory. There's just obligatory. Okay? So the other scholars, they use fard and wajib interchangeably. The Hanafis, they use fard and wajib for each of them as a specific ruling. Fard is that which is obligatory, and wajib is that which is mandatory. The most common example that can be given, according to the Hanafis, the 5 daily prayers are fard, they are obligatory, and Salatul Witr is wajib, it's mandatory. Right? For the rest of the scholars, they say that the 5 daily prayers are fard or wajib, meaning obligatory, and that witr is sunnah, it is mandub or mustahab, it is an emphasized sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the difference goes back to how they view and how they look and interpret the texts, or the different texts. Let's take a short break here. I think I've drilled you enough with fiqh. So let's take a break here and then we'll continue after the break, inshallah. Maz, how many classes do you have this semester, this quarter?
How many finals?
And how many classes are you taking?
At UCI, I have 2.
Other than UCI?
And like here.
Oh, no, I'm not at UCI. Only one of them technically you need.
Only one of them technically I need, right?
The other one is just to not rack up the...
Yeah, to not rack up the interest earlier.
There you are. So what's that second class? Huh?
Social work. I'm actually interested in that field.
But you could have taken anything, right?
I could have taken anything.
Did you take like PE or something?
There's no PE, unfortunately.
Huh?
Actually, I don't know. I think they may be PE. I should have looked into that.
There are, you can actually take like all the graduations and stuff.
I don't think for
Literally from
now
zero graduation. They're in the schedule class.
But they only, I don't think you get credit. You don't get anything, sorry.
Okay, that's boring.
I think they get one.
What's the deadline to try this week?
It's Friday.
Bishop, what year are you in? What's your name, sorry? Murad? Where do you go to school?
Same place, UCI.
UCI? 3rd year?
I'm in the last quarter, actually.
Just like Maz? We had to delay an exam for Maz last quarter because he had one final during that week. Very difficult final, he told us.
It's actually a job. I had that class with them. Can you just vouch for me and say that that was what you did for the midterm for the song?
That wasn't the class you had the group project in, right?
No.
Okay.
But for this particular class, she decided to split the midterm into 2 days. One on Friday, and then she's like, you know what, I don't want you to have a good weekend. And then the next one on Monday. So it's just like, what she didn't say that, but like, you know, she didn't want us to, I don't know, but that was a lesson.
Let me see.
So you got really
Doesn't like still like require energy to build a car?
That's true too. But the idea is like once you get through that process, everyone builds one. Slowly through time, you know. Rather than
Well, I heard the batteries they can't recycle.
I'm not sure.
I feel like you can't win with that stuff.
Like what? You see,
You're
saying never recycle? Build your own or grow your own everything. You want to make something out of wood? You're gonna have to wait 30 years for a tree. Only one tree. So you gotta use that wood wisely, chief.
You just
Why would you have to plant multiple trees? No.
Are you suggesting you want that one tree outside?
You can only plant like 3 trees. You have to space them out. Like you can only plant the new one and stuff.
Exactly. No, you have to cut it down first.
Oh my goodness, okay, this stuff that was studying.
Like lit for like 5 seconds.
Like this and that.
We should have
Here. Yeah, except I'm so blind. Like, you mean like the set that we got? But you mean like the notes that you
You know what's crazy?
Yeah.
If you water a plant in any area, you know how you
He's so precise.
need to water a plant like all over for it to get equally like hydrated. You can water an area in any area. Like throw water all over areas and roots will travel. Will take the water. Isn't that crazy? I use an example because we have a plant in my house where it's like in the corner of the roof. So in order to get like the backside of it, like the water backside, it's like kind of go around, right? And it has multiple big leaves, like it's got big leaves, it's a big plant, right? So you can't really reach to the back. All you gotta do though is pour it in one area, the soil, it will absorb it all. The roots will take it wherever you need. That's crazy. What's even crazier? You can't drown it. That's too much. That's just too much water.
I'm saying like if you drown it in different spots.
Okay, since all these used to get people in here, do you guys know of any easy online classes for it that is also open?
I think Public Health 1 might be open. Check. And then Philosophy, I think it might be filled. Philosophy 1 is pretty easy.
They have online classes?
Yeah, Public Health 1 is online and Philosophy 1 is online.
You don't need that.
That's the stuff we know.
You don't need defense.
I was processed.
It was kind of safe. It was just
Did you learn
Oh no,
logical
it's
fallacy?
waitlisted across the
Did you learn
board.
logical fallacy?
I just
I think that's the only way to do it.
Logical fallacy.
Here in logical.
They don't have any art classes.
Actually, honestly.
How are you getting the class now?
Because my registrar messed up with my thing, with like my classes to graduate. And then so it was showing that I still needed to take that class. So then I was like, enroll in this class. But then last night when I was
You just gave me
they made a mistake. I already took the requirement for this class. So I'm gonna actually take the class. I don't need the start. After I'm there. In my
Yeah, sure.
no, my humble.
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومسلمين بسنته إلى يوم الدين. Okay, so definitions of fiqh terminology, right? So we said that a person's actions can be put in, or can be categorized in one of the 6 rulings, right? And they can change, right? They can change, right? For example, the most common example that is given, right? If we were to go outside of fiqh al-ibadat and go into like mu'amalat, right? Let's talk about marriage for a second, right? Marriage, right, for a person, right, we'd say it could be permissible for a person because of a person's ability to get married, and because they've reached a certain age, it could be recommended, right? And it could also be obligatory for a person to get married if they were scared that they were going to fall into haram, right? So sometimes a person's actions, they can fall into different rulings, taking their state and their situation into consideration, right? Okay, so number 1, al-fard, that which is obligatory. Al-fard is an act that is established by a definitive text, meaning is qat'iyyu thubut, and whose meaning is also definitive, which means it's qat'iyyu dalala, and it's not open to the possibility of interpretation, right? So for example, the 5 daily prayers, purity, meaning being in a state of purity when you pray, zakah, fasting, hajj, right? All of these are established by definitive proofs. Their authenticity is definitive and their meaning is definitive. What is the ruling? The ruling is that a person must believe that it is mandatory and they must act upon it. So not only do they have to act upon it, but they have to believe that is mandatory, right? Acting upon it, but not believing it's mandatory, can lead a person to disbelief. So hypothetically, if a person were to pray 5 daily prayers, acting upon it, but they were acting upon it at the same time, believing that it's not obligatory, this is one of the things that scholars mention can take a person outside of the fold of Islam, because these things are so clear. The authenticity and the meaning is so definitive and clear, it's not open to any interpretation. So even if the person acts upon it but they don't believe in it, then it becomes majorly problematic. And the definition that scholars give for fard is that a person is rewarded for doing it, right? And they are liable and deserving of punishment for not doing it. And once again, the wording is very specific. They say the person is rewarded for doing it, but they don't say that person will be punished for not doing it. They say he's liable and deserving of punishment for not doing it. Because we say a person that, for example, leaves off a fard is, or a person that commits a sin or dies upon sins without repenting, they are taht al-mashi'ah. They are under the will of Allah. If Allah wills, He can punish them, and if Allah wills, He can pardon them, right? So the technical definition is that they're rewarded for doing it and they're liable and deserving of punishment for not doing it.
For al-wajib?
No, we're still on fard right now. No, we're talking about fard right now.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
We're talking about fard. Right. Unless you mean by wajib the Hanbali, Shafi'i, Maliki wajib, which is similar to the fard. Right, but I don't think you mean that.
Yeah, I do not mean that. But for fard, is this definitive?
Yes.
So the meaning, okay.
The authenticity is definitive and the meaning is definitive. Okay. Fard is of 2 types. The first is called fardul ayn, which is an individual obligation. It's mandatory upon every single legally responsible person individually. And the second is known as what is Fardul Kifaya, a communal obligation. It's mandatory upon a group of people, right? Meaning that if a group of people within a community do it, then everyone else is absolved from doing it. One second. So Fardul Kifaya, communal obligation, right? If a group of people in the community do it, it absolves everyone else from doing it. What is an example? An example is when a person passes away, washing the body of the person that has deceased. Another example would be Salatul Janazah, the prayer of the deceased upon the one who's passed away. It's a communal obligation, right? Now I might ask you on your test when it comes, hey, give me an example of a communal obligation, right? But if the communal obligation is left by the entire community, then everyone in the community is liable and responsible. But if a group of people do it, then the obligation is lifted from everyone else. Is that clear?
For Fardul Kifaya, that's still tied strictly to things that fall into the category of Fard, right?
Yes. So it's still an obligation, it's still mandatory, right? But it's not mandatory upon each single individual. For example, each single individual in the Muslim community has to pray. But not each single individual in the community has to pray Salatul Janazah on someone that has passed away. As long as some people do it in the community, it absolves everyone else. You had a question?
One question. So the individuals who are actually doing the Fard Kifaya, they're rewarded for it, not the rest of the community, right?
Correct.
Okay, second question.
So the first question was, those that are carrying out the Fard Kifaya, the communal obligation, they are rewarded for it. And the ones that are not doing it are not rewarded for it, but at the same time they're not deserving or liable of punishment, and the obligation is lifted from them because it was done.
Second, Fardul Ayn, is it the same Ayn, Ya?
Yes.
So what meaning, I mean, yesterday you discussed the word Ayn and different meanings of it, so where is this coming from?
So usually the Ayn over here is also used like bidhatihi, the thing itself. Over here, Ayn means like every single individual. Ayn, like we talked about before, it has multiple definitions, right? So I could say, did you see it bi'aynihi, like did you see it not with your eye, but did you see it itself, right? So over here, it's referring to every single one. The second is al-wajib, that which is mandatory. This is an act that is established by a speculative text that has room for interpretation. When we talked about text, we said there are four, and those four can be divided into two, right? Classification, that which is definitive would be, the authenticity is definitive and the meaning is definitive. That which was speculative was the other three, right? So al-wajib is an act that is established by a speculative text that has room for interpretation. What are some examples in the Hanafi madhab? Salatul Witr. Salatul Witr is wajib. Also Eid prayer. The Eid prayer is wajib. And Sadaqatul Fitr, the sadaqah that is given on Eid day, before the Eid prayer or towards the end of Ramadan, right? What is the ruling? A person must act upon it, but they don't have to believe in it. Why don't they have to believe in it? Because it's based on a speculative text. But they still have to act upon it. Right? This is according to the Hanafis, right? They have to act upon it.
Speculative in authenticity and meaning?
Usually speculative in meaning and not authenticity. once, and then we say they are rewarded for doing it. They're rewarded for doing it, and they're liable and deserving of punishment for not doing it. So it's the same thing. They're rewarded for doing it, and they're liable and deserving of punishment for not doing it. What were the two main differences between wajib and fard according to the Hanafis? The first main difference was that fard was based on a text that was definitive, right? And wajib was based on a text that was speculative. The other main difference was that in fard, a person has to not just act upon it, but they have to believe in it. In wajib, the difference was that they have to act upon it, but they don't necessarily have to believe in it. And the reason that they don't have to believe in it goes back to the first difference, because the text in itself that established that thing that is wajib is speculative. Like I mentioned, the other schools of thought, you could say the majority, right, don't have this categorization of fard and wajib. They use fard and wajib interchangeably, and when they refer to fard or wajib, they're talking about everything the Hanafis put under fard. Right? But they're looking at the definition of fard that the Hanafis have given, and that's the way they use fard and wajib. They don't have this category of wajib. Right? Because this category of wajib in the Hanafis, it's coming between fard and sunnah. It's a middle category. The majority, they just have fard or wajib, and then they have sunnah. Is that clear? Right. So for example, the Hanbalis, we say that witr is sunnah. It's a sunnah mu'akkada, right? It's an emphasized sunnah, right? To the point where some Hanbali scholars, they say, so technically from that perspective, if we say it's sunnah, according to the majority, if you do not pray witr, then you're not sinful, or you're not liable or deserving of punishment. According to the Hanafis, if you miss witr, you're liable and you're deserving of punishment. So choose your madhab wisely.
Wait, but so over here it says that for sunnah mu'akkada.
Yeah, we'll get to sunnah mu'akkada. You're jumping the gun. I know where you're going. A caveat of sunnah mu'akkada, right? But for example, the Hanbalis, they say, although they say witr is sunnah, it's an emphasized sunnah, right? They say that a person that, for example, leaves it frequently or all the time, they say لا تقبل شهادته. His testimony should not be accepted. What? His testimony should not be accepted. Because they say like it says a certain thing about the person's religiosity. And perhaps it's best that their testimony is not accepted. Because if they're leaving off this emphasized sunnah on a consistent and regular basis, do you really want to trust them with the testimony? So that's the way they look at it, right? Do you get it?
So do they ask them? Or do you
ask them? They don't ask them. But if it's known. Now when we get to sunnah, we'll take we'll talk about sunnah, we won't talk about it now. And this, I think what Iman was referring to. When you have sunnah mu'akkada and emphasize sunnah, right? There are certain sunnahs that are mu'akkada and other sunnahs, things that are recommended to do, that are not mu'akkada, they're not emphasized. The main difference is those that are mu'akkada were never left by the Prophet ﷺ, right? So for example, you have the daily sunnah that go with, the daily prayers, right? But even within those, there are those that are emphasized more than the others. For example, the Prophet ﷺ, he wouldn't pray the regular sunnah when he was traveling, but he would still pray the 2 sunnah before Fajr, and he would still pray the witr, right? But sunnah by itself, even those that are mu'akkada, part of the definition means that you do not have to pray it. Brother asked me yesterday, he said that, hypothetically, let's say I miss Salatul Fajr, okay? And then I wake up late and I want to pray Salatul Fajr. He says, do I have to pray the 2 sunnah and then pray Fajr, or can I just pray Fajr? And I didn't understand his question until he said, no, just from a technical perspective, what do I have to pray? So what do you have to pray? You have to pray the 2 rakahs of Fajr. That's what you have to pray. But it is recommended, or or advise that you also pray the 2 sunnah, right? But what you have to pray is the 2 fard. Now the question, or the issue that arises, if a person, some of the scholars have mentioned, or a majority you could say have mentioned, that if a person regularly leaves an emphasized sunnah, right? They leave an emphasized sunnah on a consistent basis. A number of scholars have said that this person is liable or deserving of punishment. Not because of the definition of sunnah itself, but rather because if this person is doing it on a consistent basis, it's as if it's like al-i'radu an sunnah, it's as if the person is turning away from the way of the Messenger of Allah, and it's a sign of arrogance, and they're like, it's an intentional effort to turn away from the sunnah, right? And they say because of that, right? Not necessarily because of leaving the sunnah, but because of what's behind them leaving the sunnah, is that they could be liable or deserving of punishment. Iman, that's where you were?
Yeah, and then my question was, does that fact vary from like school of thought to school of thought?
That doesn't vary
or is that
from.
Just generally
That doesn't vary from school of thought to school of thought, but rather you could say, I would have to go back and check, but there are a good number of scholars who took this opinion, right? But there's not a consensus on this issue, right? There are some other scholars who have argued that still no, if a person consistently leaves an emphasized sunnah, right? A person can do so, could be doing so not out of arrogance and just out of laziness, and not a dislike for the Messenger of Allah or a dislike for his way, but rather they're just not doing it and they can't be held liable or deserving of punishment for something that they're not obligated to do.
To bring it back full circle almost, the hadith that you mentioned earlier about when you enter the masjid, you have to pray, or it was stated that you pray 2 rak'ahs upon entering. Is that sunnah mu'akkada, sunnah?
So, I mean, just to solve this issue, and we'll stop here, we'll discuss it. So we covered up until the mandatory, right? So tomorrow we'll continue from a sunnah, correct? Tomorrow we'll continue from a sunnah. The issue of what's called, and this prayer is called Tahiyyatul Masjid. This prayer is called Tahiyyatul Masjid. First of all, realize that the majority of scholars held the opinion that Tahiyyatul Masjid is sunnah and it is not obligatory, right? So in the case of someone who entered the masjid after the adhan of the Isha and before the iqamah of Salatul Isha, and that person sat down, right? According to the majority of scholars, this person would not be deserving or liable of punishment because they have left a sunnah and they have not left something that is obligatory. There is a minority of scholars that held that it is obligatory and they have to pray it, right? Now whether it is sunnah or an emphasized sunnah is an issue of contention, right? An issue of contention. Also on that same note, realize that Tahiyyatul Masjid is not a separate prayer in itself. It can be a separate prayer, but it doesn't have to be a separate prayer in itself. What do I mean by that is, let's say a person walks into the masjid after the adhan of Fajr has been called, right? So they walk into the masjid and they realize they have some time between the iqamah and the time they've entered. So as they enter, before sitting down, they pray their 2 sunnah of Fajr. Their 2 sunnah of Fajr, they count as their 2 sunnah of Fajr, but they also take the place of Tahiyyatul Masjid because they have followed the commandment of not sitting down until they pray, right? So they've entered the masjid and before sitting down they've prayed. So in this case it would take the place of their Tahiyyatul Masjid. Also in a similar situation, let's say a person walks into the masjid and the Isha prayer has already started, right? So they walk in, or they find the mu'adhin making iqamah. So they walk up to the first row or the second row and they stand in the line and they say takbir when the imam says takbir behind the imam. Once again, this would take place of their Tahiyyatul Masjid because once again they have obeyed the commandment of not sitting down until they've prayed, right? So Tahiyyatul Masjid, they say Tahiyyatul Masjid is not a prayer in itself, right? It can take many forms or many variations. Now there are times where it can be a prayer by itself, right? So for example, if you enter into the masjid after the adhan of Isha, before the iqamah of Isha, and you pray 2 rak'ahs, right? In this case, you've prayed 2 nafil units of prayer, right? That you've done as a greeting to the masjid, right? Is that clear? All right. Any other questions?
So I heard one time one of my teachers said that the difference between fard and wajib is that I'm not sure if I understood it correctly or that's what he meant, is that
okay, so the dalala here is dhanni.
Yes.
The dalala here is dhanni.
So
and the thubut is qat'i or dhanni, because you said I heard one of my teachers said there's a lot of yani, so it's all dhanni already at this point. Okay, so okay.
So he said that the fard are fard because they're mentioned in the Quran and they're from the Quran, and the wajibs are not exactly directly mentioned in the Quran. They're from the hadith.
So they said the fard specifically are that which is mentioned in the Quran.
They're the commandments in the Quran.
No.
And then the wajib are all what we get from the hadith.
This could be derived. I mean, you could make a solid case for this, because the fard are those things that are right were commanded, directly in the Quran for, and everything that has been mentioned for wajib is that which is found in the Sunnah, not which is found in the Quran.
So are you saying that you can't have a hadith as like an evidence for a fard?
No, you can. But she's saying the differentiation here is, how do they make this distinction? Because this is an interesting distinction, because at the end of the day, you're saying fard and wajib are both mandatory, right? And you're saying both of them, if a person leaves them, they're liable, right? So what is the slight difference? How were these derived? And if we look at it, because this is a way of, like, you're looking at it the other way. After you have all the rulings, you're going back and looking at it, and you're looking at it. No, but technically you can have something that's fard, right? That's found in the Sunnah, right? But not found in the Quran, right? But you wouldn't find that in the actions of worship. There's nothing from the actions of worship, prayer, fasting, zakah, hajj, all of these things. There are none of these things that you'll find only in the Sunnah and not in the Quran. From the actions of worship, specifically.
Just worship.
Yeah, just worship, right? Like, for example, the returning of salams. Like, someone gives you salams, you returning salams, right? You have to do that. That's an obligation.
That's in the Quran.
Huh?
That's direct order from the Quran.
Yeah, it's a direct order from the Quran, right? But the وَإِذَا حُيِّيتُمْ بِتَحِيَّةٍ فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنَ مِنْهَا. Like, it's a general commandment. But to the gist of it, or like where we actually get that, hey, you have to respond to the salams, is from the Sunnah, right? But she's talking about specifically the actions of worship.
So if you come in during the salat and masjid, you don't have to pray 2 rak'ahs after the masjid?
If you come in to the masjid while prayer, no. That salah has taken place of your tahiyyatul masjid. You prayed tahiyyatul masjid after congregational prayer because you walked in to congregation. Sorry, you were saying you walked in before prayer.
After it started, I prayed my mother. Then I was sitting after and I came to the masjid after.
You got in, you prayed maghrib. The first thing you did. After you finished, the lady was like, pray to your tahiyyat. The purpose of tahiyyatul masjid is that you greet the masjid with prayer. Not a specific prayer, but any prayer.